In the killing fields of the Bronx, where 225 homicides a year turned streets into war zones, one man became the unbreakable force of justice. Meet Vernon Geberth, Lieutenant Commander, author of Practical Homicide Investigation and the media's Godfather of Homicide. From the savage Bronx Bathtub Torture case to New York's first DNA conviction in the Vilma Ponce slaying, from nabbing crack kingpin Larry Davis amid a cop shooting frenzy, to battling NYPD politics that nearly broke him. This is the untold saga of grit, glory, and the ghosts of unsolved murders, the Godfather of Homicide, Vernon Geberth's NYPD legacy. This is his story.
Can you introduce yourself for me, please?
By name or rank?
Both.
Okay. Well, I'm Vernon J. Geberth. My rank upon retirement was Lieutenant Commander, CO of Bronx Homicide.
Okay. Vernon, you have the nickname as the Godfather of Homicide. Where did that come from?
The media. I'm not arrogant enough to call myself the Godfather. What happened with that title is, because of my affiliations with agencies across the United States and all the training I've done and the different departments I've interacted with, every serial murder case, major serial murder case in this country or national case, I had a piece of. They didn't know that. So when the national media called me, it'd be Fox News or CNN, I'd go with Fox News. I don't like CNN. And what would happen is I would have, not to divulge the evidence, but to be able to articulate what the case was about, and more importantly, get the investigators who had the case, get their perspective on national television. And when I walked into the studio one day, and it was in connection with the Long Island serial murder case, and the gal says, "Oh my God, you're the Godfather of Homicide." I says, "I am?" She's like, "That's kind of neat." I never thought of myself as the Godfather. So that's where it comes from.
Okay. So Vernon, you wrote the book, Practical Homicide Investigation, Tactics, Procedures, and Forensic Techniques. It's in its 5th edition right now. Why did you write the book?
Initially, I wrote the book, but I didn't write the book to write a textbook. I wrote the book based on my protocol as I tried to catch up with what homicide work was. Don't forget, I spent 5 years in narcotics. Now I'm into supervising homicide. A good supervisor should learn the process before he starts telling people what to do, especially when they have 10, 15, and 20 years of the job. So it was my responsibility to learn what they do. And it was difficult because homicide investigations were individual actions at the time. So what I tried to do is I tried to select who I thought were the stars, because at this time in my career, I've been a tactical patrol force, I've been a detective, I've been a sergeant. I know a lot of people, I know a lot of personalities. I'm looking for what I consider to be the stars. And I tell them, "Listen, I'm going to be hanging out with you." "Oh, boss, give us a break." I says, No, not to tell you what to do. I want to learn what you do. So every time I saw a technique that was good, I wrote it down. Meanwhile, every day off, I'd go to the library. They didn't have Google when I was doing this. It was called index cards. I read everything there was on homicide investigation. There were only 4 books that were any good: Charlie O'Hara, Lemoyne Snyder, Eddie Dyckman, and someone else. But they were old, and they hadn't been updated. But there was nice, solid information in there. So I would take that back, and then I would compare it to what the cases that we had. So what I was doing, Niles, is that I was creating a protocol. And I didn't even think of it. I was just doing it for myself so I could properly supervise. So now I began to notice that almost all the arrests, there wasn't much evidence. It was all confessions. I'm going, hey, it'd be nice to have evidence. So I'm familiarizing myself with various forms of evidence. In the meantime, I get picked up by the FBI National Academy. Now, that's a big deal to go to the National Academy. The only reason I was selected is because I was writing articles for Law and Order on protocols for homicide and this. So they want to tap into my brain. You know how the FBI is. Find out what you do and then tell everybody if they did it. All right? So while in the FBI Academy, I'm finding out everything they have on homicide, they don't do homicide. They got forensics and they got administration. They have no tactics, no street stuff. So that's what we're going to bring back. But what happens is, and this is funny because I'm like 24/7. I'm either at the library or with the cops pulling cold cases, and I start, introducing forensics. I said, listen, we got to try this, we got to try that. Hey, boss, just try it, see what happens. So it's funny because when you work with a group of people, I think there were 50 detectives in the Bronx Homicide. All right, so I got 25 detectives in this zone. This zone was the busiest homicide zone in New York City. 6.5 square miles, 225 homicides a year. It was a killing field. It was unbelievable. I mean, between the abandoned buildings, the drugs, and this and that, and so I could see why there was no protocol, because it was like combat homicide investigation. Get off the street, get the body, move, right? So it was kind of interesting, because I'm getting more involved in now I'm learning the process, and I'm start giving direction. And I noticed that what would happen, because I'm trying to get forensics in, certain crime scene people wouldn't respond to the crime scene if I was the supervisor. Why? Because they didn't want to do extra work. So I said, well, you're going to do extra work because I'm here. I says, I want you to use luminol. Now, luminol is a reagent that brings blood up. So right away, can't use it, boss. Why not? It's carcinogenic. I said, can you spell it? If you can spell it, you don't have to use it. So I got my way, and then once we had the evidence thing going, all of a sudden people are catching on. So at the same time, don't forget, I'm also teaching, okay? And I've been picked up for the New York City Homicide School, which is a big deal. That's the most prestigious class that you can go to or be part of. So I went to the class as a detective sergeant, but I never got a chance to teach the class. But when I came back from the FBI Academy, the FBI is calling up the police department to detach me to teach in the suburbs. So they're saying, well, if he can teach in the suburbs, he can teach here. So I go down to the homicide school. I got to tell you, Niles, you gotta be from New York to really appreciate this. You get in front of 220, 250 New York City detectives looking at you up there, like, who the fuck are you up there to teach me? So I'm not going to teach you anything. Let me show you what I got. So what would happen is I would show successful cases, forensics, and at the same time I was teaching outside the city. So I was picking back other cases that we could implement in New York City. So basically, I'm creating a whole different perspective. Now, between everything else, I'm not busy enough, right? In every command I'm in, at the outgoing platoon, I would address the outgoing platoon for half an hour, show them some slides, cases. I would give them materials. This is a crime scene sign-in sheet. Nobody goes in unless they sign. This is this is that. I'd give them little protocols. So when I went to the homicide scene, patrol had it under control. Because if patrol's not working with you, they're working against you. So now I have patrol officers doing what they're supposed to do, and it's making my job easier. But what you got to do is you got to make sure they get recognition. So I would write them up to the commanding officer how they did a great job. Now they're striving to do better, and I'm doing better. So there's no secret to this, but it's practical homicide investigation. It's funny because when I wrote the book, it turned out that one of the pieces of material that I was referencing was a book called Practical Homicide Investigation by Edward Dyckman. It was a small little book, but it was a practical book. I said, I want to design my book like that, but you can't have the same name. So I said, Practical Homicide, Tactics, Procedures, and Forensic Techniques. Now, you know what those mean? TPF was my favorite assignment, the Tactical Patrol Force. So I'm implementing all this stuff. It was a lot of fun. And then I decided to write the book, 1982. Comes out with an 83 publication date. I write the book. Now, that was kind of neat because I went to college, you couldn't get me to read a book. Now I'm writing a book. So it comes out and there's a newspaper article, the New York Daily News, the cop who wrote the book on murder. Wow, that's pretty neat. 24 hours later, this captain calls me up. Congratulations, Sergeant, on your book. I says, yes, sir. You're under investigation. My stomach dropped. What the hell did I do? You violated department protocol. I say, okay. By whose authority did you write the book? I said, First Amendment. You're a wise guy. How about the Second Amendment? Now I'm getting aggravated because what's happening on the outside, The FBI is singing my praises because they're in the book. The police commissioner is like in the book. I'm getting all this outside accolades. I'm going to beat this guy. But here's was the protocol. When I had asked to use official police department photographs in my book, I knew what I was dealing with because this department has a lot of snakes. So official, that means it comes from the police department. What they didn't know is I had my own, so screw them. So when it came down, oh, he's trying to profit financially with a product from the city of New York. Oh, okay, I won't use your official pictures. I thought they'd be happy to be part of the book. Everybody else was, even the FBI. So I found out later that this eunuch captain from Internal Affairs was ordering crime scene pictures from every homicide I went to. There were between 600 and 800 homicides I had gone to. He's ordering the pictures and trying to match them to the book. It's not going to happen. He calls me up one day, Sergeant, what's the difference between official and unofficial? I read chapter 6, you fucking moron. Boom, the chapter on photographs. And I beat him. But you don't get away with that, Niles.
Yeah.
That'll come back later.
Yeah. What makes a good homicide detective?
I'm sorry?
What makes a good homicide detective?
Oh, perseverance, dedication, seeker of the truth. You can't make these things happen, okay? I wrote an oath of practical homicide investigation. Can I look at it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I wrote this oath of practical homicide investigation, which sums up what our duties are and what the duties of the detective are. It's called Thou Shalt Not Kill. Homicide investigation is a profound duty. As an officer entrusted with such a duty, it is incumbent upon you to develop an understanding of the dynamics and principles of professional homicide investigation. Practical homicide investigation suggests that things be done right the first time and that knowledge is power. Knowledge which has been enhanced with experience, flexibility, and common sense. Practitioners must be prepared to use tactics, procedures, and forensic techniques in their pursuit of the truth, and then follow the course of events and the facts as they develop to their ultimate conclusion. Death investigation constitutes a heavy responsibility, and as such, let no person deter you from the truth and your own personal commitment to see that justice is done, not only for the deceased, but for the surviving family as well. And remember, you're working for God. You work for God. And what I would do is, I can't reach it. What I would do in my classes,
Yeah.
I had these plaques. These, they're like vinyl. We work for God. And would give those to people in the class to participate. I gave out over 90,000 of those across the country, Canada, and maybe in the world for people who came from international countries. One of my biggest thrills was watching a program like First 48, and they would tune into the cubicle, and in the cubicle would be my sign, "We work for God." That's one of my students. It was a great feeling.
Yeah.
Because I was spreading the word. So.
What do you think the most important trait is for being a good homicide detective?
Perseverance, the frustration of dealing with the administration, people, crime scenes. It's easy to back away. It's easy to say, let it go. Perseverance. And when things don't work, stick with it. You know, there's a lot to be said about cold case investigations, but cold case investigations are no good if you didn't do it right the first time and you gathered evidence. It's so important because even though now, in this particular time, you won't be able to solve that case because you don't have enough information, that evidence will come back later on, 10, 20, 30, 40 years later, especially with DNA. So it's so important, that protocol, do it right the first time, only get one chance, and I get a big kick because that sign-in sheet, it gave the cops a little, like, authority. You can't go in there, boss, unless you sign in. Well, fuck it, I don't want to go in there anyway. That's the whole idea. You know, it's people being people. I mean, I've seen it myself. It's funny as hell. But those are tools, and those are tools to make the job doable.
So Vernon, one of the interviews that I did was with a homicide detective, very well-known homicide detective in Los Angeles, and he thought a good transition to make a good homicide detective was a gang detective. But that's not what you've said a couple times. You had a long and illustrious career, and one of your assignments was narcotics.
Yeah.
Why do you think being in narcotics translates to being a good homicide detective?
Because in narcotics, everybody's lying. The suspect's lying, the witnesses are lying, the lawyers are lying. Everybody, if you can find that kernel of truth in that bucket of lies, you'd be a good homicide detective, because that's what it's all about. So I don't discount being a gang detective. It doesn't make you a good detective, a homicide detective. But narcotics is a whole different operation. And if you're involved in major cases, as I was, wiretaps, bugs, surveillance, all of these are skill sets. You know, cops sell themselves short. When you're in the police department, just going through the academy is a skill set. Firearms training, physical defense, right? These are skill sets that the average person doesn't have. Now, as you go through the police department, okay, in different divisions, you're picking up skills. You're picking up skills of surveillance. You're picking up skills of operating under certain conditions. And you take, now also, as you develop these skills, what did you do before you came on the police department? Were you a telephone person? Were you a truck driver? Were you a cab driver, right? These are other pieces that come into place. I was a UPS driver, okay? I drove for UPS. What was happening was my entire younger life, I had everything I was involved in as a kid. Altar boy, Boy Scouts, Bugle Boy, VFW, right? Had a uniform. I always had a uniform. I guess I was destined to go into uniform. As I get older, now I become a lifeguard, another skill set. And I'm driving an ambulance, another skill set. I'm a security guard, another skill set. And all of these things come into play later on. Obviously, life saving is going to come into big time. But what about when you're doing undercover work? I look like a real UPS driver, because I was. So these are skills you pick up. Now, as you get more involved in different major cases, the dynamics involved are amazing, because no case is the same. There's always a twist or a turn. Being able to tactically respond to that. In other words, don't be anal. Like I worked for this lieutenant in narcotics. I swear to God, this guy was the most anal personality I ever met. He reminded me of Major Malcolm Powers from Heartbreak Ridge, and I'm Gunnery Sergeant Tommy Highway, all right? Try and deal with this fucking idiot. He's going to get my undercovers killed with his bullshit, his practical, everything he did turned to shit. He lost $2,400 in buy money because of his plan. He could not deviate. You can't operate like that in the street. And I always protected my men. My men came first, because when I became a boss, I said, I'm going to be the kind of boss that I wanted to work for when I was a cop. And that's what it's all about.
Was your goal, when you started NYPD, was your goal always to be a homicide detective?
No, my goal was to become a detective, get a gold shield. That's a big deal, the gold shield.
Yeah.
And I came in as a tactical patrol force. That is one of the greatest outfits they ever created. They'll never have it again, because it was pure.
What did you do? As a tactical patrol force, what did you do?
Okay, we were crime fighters 24/7. We didn't do 80 cases, we didn't do traffic control, we didn't work in precincts. We operated outside of the precincts. Now, back when I became a tactical patrol force, corruption was systemic in major police departments, especially the NYPD. We were the uncorruptibles. We were the Green Berets of the police department. And becoming a tactical patrol force cop, I was not 6 foot tall, but I had 3 years of college, and I aced the police academy. I was number 3 in the police academy, so I got the assignment I requested. I was so proud when I came down with those 3 letters on my collar, TPF, all right? The first thing that happened when we graduated in the police academy, we went for more training. Building rappelling, sniper rifles, crowd control. So we were constantly in training. When we weren't in training, we were in the inner cities, in the ghettos. Harlem, South Bronx, Bedford-Stuyvesant, Jamaica. All the areas that were high crime areas, from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. And we enforced the law, and not Mickey Mouse, heavy-duty felonies. And the bottom line was, if you performed and did well, you would get into Detective Bureau. Well, I must have did well. I had hundreds of arrests. I had medals, commendations. In 3 years, I came into the Detective Bureau as a white shield detective. A white shield means you have your regular badge. It'll be a year before I get the gold shield, but I'm in the Bureau. What a big step that was. And I was pretty proud of that. And as luck would have it, I got a shitty detail because I'm new. We had to guard the Cuban ambassador. What a shit detail that was. Nobody wanted it, so they put us into a manpower pool. Around the clock, York Avenue, 57th Street, smelling the dog piss, the summer. I said, let's see if we can get out of this detail. Let's start taking his pictures and making notes. Maybe he'll complain to the State Department and get us thrown off the detail. No such luck, you're stuck. So I was stuck till September of, September of 68, yeah. Okay, I went into Bronx Narcotics. And going into Bronx Narcotics, now I'm working in plainclothes, South Bronx, all these areas that I'm familiar with as a patrolman, as a detective now. Now I'm in narcotics. And made some pretty big arrests, because you know how it works in narcotics. You get the people in the street, then go to the next level. We made some big seizures. Back in those days, we didn't have cell phones. If you're lucky, you had a radio. All you had was your gun and the handcuffs. I remember one operation, we weren't planning on making arrests. We were trying to make observations to get a search warrant. And while we were making observations, the son of a bitch would see us. That was too late. We have to charge into the apartment. Now, we just saw a shotgun going down the apartment. So me and my partner run in there, and there were 5 people. We had to disarm them. It was pretty hairy, because you couldn't see a damn thing because all the windows were covered, right? We disarmed them, shotgun, got the guns back and everything. I forget how much dope we had, like 2,000 glassine envelopes and bags of dope. Now we're stuck. I always carry 2 sets of cuffs. It was a good thing, because now we're cuffing them to each other. Now what do? Well, thank God they had a phone. Now we're calling the police department for help. send reinforcements. That was one bust. Another bust we had, we made observations and came into the place, and we were about to execute a search warrant. Me, my 2 partners, bang through the door. All of a sudden, my partner yells, "Shotgun!" Boom! Right? Missed us. We return fire. We don't hit nothing. We're disoriented. He runs into the next room. We chase him. He goes for another rifle. We all pile on him. We almost got killed. That was pretty scary. But all these arrests were like building my reputation. That summer, I got 3 letters of commendation from the grand jury, which is unheard of. You maybe get 1. I got 3 for that and a bribery arrest. So it was pretty active. And then, as luck would have it, get hit with a civilian complaint. The night of the shooting, we'd been up for 28 hours. We're coming back to the barn, to the precinct, to the command. We come to a traffic light, the light turns green, and the guy in the car is not moving. He's either drunk or so we blow the horn. He jumps out of the car with a knife. I said, no problem, we got guns. We're gonna go to a knife fight? He runs away. I said to my partner, I'm too tired too, let him run. So we go back to the command. I'm telling the captain what happened, because he wants to know about the shooting the night before, and I tell him about this crazy guy with the knife. Next thing you know, the phone rings. He's in the precinct with a Black Panther witness. The Black Panthers, you know what they are. Mm-hmm. Making a complaint. I says, good, hold on. He's under arrest for menacing. I'll be right there. So I come back to the precinct. I locked him up, right?
This was the guy with the knife?
Yeah, I lock him up. Now the fun begins. Civilian Complaint Review Board, this nasty captain. What a son of a bitch he was. He was a bad person. There'll be a special place in hell for him. He calls us down for an interview, and we get our rights read to us. It's a serious. He's claiming we felonious assaulted him with our guns. I'm saying, no, we defended ourselves. So he questions us. He says, listen, kid, you can help yourself out. Tell me the truth. I start laughing at him. You gotta be kidding me, Captain. That's what I do to criminals. Are you kidding me? Yeah! He starts yelling and screaming. The union guy pulls me out. I go back to the Bronx. My captain says, do not submit to any interviews. This guy wants you. For some reason, he wants you. So I don't think nothing about it till I go to court. The district attorney says, hey, Vernon, let me talk to you. You're in trouble. The CCRB is coming up there launching a criminal investigation for assault against you. He says, I have the case. I said, oh, are you willing to talk to me without an attorney? I said, absolutely. I didn't do anything wrong. So I talk to him. I tell him what happened. He goes, well, that's not what the police department's saying. The son of a bitch was putting together a felonious assault on me. So we have to go before a grand jury. And that's scary, because you got to waive your rights, and before the grand jury, don't forget, I could get locked up. I tell the story to the grand jurors, no true bill. It's dismissed on the spot. before I got back to my Bronx command, this captain had me transferred by telephone from the Bronx to Harlem, an out-of-borough transfer to punish me. So you see, it's personal now. Now, I can detect any place, Harlem, the Bronx, I'm a detective. But with luck would have it, I got picked up for a new unit that was called the Taxi Truck Surveillance Unit, which was the prelude to anti-crime. Unmarked cars, 5 boroughs, and we're making felony arrests. I loved it. This is great. This is better than being in a squad catching cases. Well, during that time, I did a couple of really fantastic operations, police impersonators with guns, holding people up. Guys fire at us, but firing a pin, it hits the bullet doesn't go off. We can't shoot because there's people behind him. We take him down. Robberies, responsible for 20 cab robberies. We got this guy, was a gang. Things are going good. It's now December, okay, 1969. It's actually it's 1970, and I'm number 69 on the sergeant's list. I'm going to be in the first class because I was a student. The teletype comes up. My name's not on it. I go, Captain, my name's not on it. He says, let me make a phone call. That captain, that same freaking captain downtown, no, he has open charges. He can't get promoted. He has open charges. They have to be satisfied. I'm sick to my stomach. We just had our 3rd child. I could use the extra money. I don't know what to do. I got to go back to my 26th Precinct Command. That's the year they had a police strike, 1970. Okay, 1971, it's January. The cops go on strike. I'm a detective, I can't go on strike. So now I'm a detective on patrol. You can't make this stuff up, this is crazy. I'm doing what I got to do. I go and get transferred to robbery. We have the beginning of the Black Liberation Army, the police assassinations. I'm working those cases. Really scary times. In fact, it was so bad, we used to bring our own guns because all we had was the 38s. These people have semi-automatic weapons. I brought in a shotgun. Somebody else brought a machine gun. It's pretty scary stuff. Anyway, long story short, I'm a detective. In those days, detectives didn't get overtime when they went to court. So it's my birthday the next day. I'm down in Manhattan Court. It's 1 o'clock. I'm dismissed early. It's oh good, I can go home. We have a nice breakfast, nice supper, me, my wife, the kids. I'm at a traffic light at Mulberry Canal, and I see 2 people grabbing somebody off the street and forcing him into a car. I goes, holy shit, it's a hit, because I'm in mafia territory. I try to get attention of the traffic cop, right? I start blowing the horn. No, he's directing traffic. All he doing is causing attention to myself by blowing the horn, so they see me. So as it's too late now, I'm committed. So I start trying to chase them. They speed up. Now, it just so happens that Detective Geberth has a siren in his car because I'm a gun-ho guy and it's a burglar alarm. So I activate it. Now we're racing through the streets of Little Italy. I reach out, I fire a shot in the air, and I point like I'm pointing at them. They slow down, they pull over and slide. Detectives, pull over. They make a U-turn. Now we're going the wrong way, 50 miles an hour, down up street, Mulberry Street in Manhattan. I says, Jesus, Vernon, what are you doing? You're in a chase with these guys, your own car, you fired a shot, you already got passed by for sergeant. What the fuck are you thinking? It's too late, the adrenaline kicked in, I gotta rescue the guy. Anyway, I forced the car up, Kenmore and Broome. I forced him up onto the sidewalk. The driver comes out with a gun. I shoot him, he goes down. I lose peripheral vision. I can't see what's going on the right side of my body, but I see this big guy getting out of the car, running down the street. I said, well, shit, he's too big I'll have to shoot him. So I'm lining up a shot when the moment the baby carriage coming up, throw the gun up, I said, let me go for it. I do a running tackle. It goes on the ground. All of a sudden I hear, don't move, you fuckers. I go, shit, I'm dead, right? They were off-duty cops. I was behind police headquarters. I did not realize where I was. That is unbelievable. Detective, he's under arrest. I go back, I see this guy brushing himself off. I said, what's going on? My diamonds, did you get my diamonds? I had $100,000 worth of diamonds in 1971. All right? I said, well, I got the diamonds back, right? I got a guy in there. Now everybody's responding. Bosses, lieutenants, captains, what's this? The guy I shot, he's not there. Now I know I hit him because there's a plate glass window behind him, there's no hole. Later on, we find out he was picked up by some other mobsters and brought to a social club. Now, in the precinct, this guy's under arrest. He's a Gambino soldier, all right, from the Gambino crime family. This was a mafia-authorized hit, a rip-off. So we're in there, and the guy has all the diamonds. This is my entire stock, detective. I says, let me call the Rackets Bureau. Let me speak to the chief of rackets. I says, listen, I have a complainant. We got a robbery, and it's got like his entire stock. Can I just take a picture of this stock, and we'll hold one diamond for evidence purposes, but like, we'll take pictures of the other material. That's a good idea, detective. You could do that. I said, okay, good. The guy goes, thank God. Now we got to go to court to arraign him. He starts getting phone calls threatening from the mafia. Drop the charges or you're dead, da-da-da. So I tell the district attorney, I said, listen, my complainant is being threatened. He says, no problem. His attorney's a mob attorney. Let me talk to him. So knock it off. There's no bail. Okay, stops. Gets arraigned. Next day, big story, right? Hero detective. I should have got the Medal of Valor for that, okay? Put myself in harm's way. I saved it, saved 100,000. I'm going to get a commendation. Why? You have open charges. You're a cowboy. I said, oh, shit. I almost got myself killed. That was the medal, all right? I saved the guy. That's what counts. So what happens is now, I don't think much about it. You know, I go resume my other detective duties. One day I get a subpoena from the Rackets Bureau. I'm under investigation. I said, I'm under investigation. I report downtown. Detective, you'll sit over here. All right, what's going on? That case that you had, why was that case dismissed? I said, I don't know it was dismissed. I never got notified. I said, here's my notes. I've been in touch with the complainant. Oh, hold it. That's that mob judge. You know what this judge did? He called for a hearing without notifying the district attorney's office, and the charges were dismissed. The guy walked out. So now I got to go before the grand jury again. He gets re-indicted, and now I get a nice letter from the chief district attorney how Sergeant Geberth is a good guy. Yeah, but you're about to lock me up. Now I'm a good guy. What a world. All right. So I survived that.
When do you get out of the outhouse? I mean, you have the quote unquote investigations on you for a long time. It's preventing you from getting.
It's preventing everything.
Yeah.
Well, here's how I'm going to get out of it. I'm going to the trial room that May. This heroic action took place in April. Everybody's still talking about it. I go to, now I'm really worried because the trial room's a kangaroo court. You're automatically found guilty. The captain's up there talking how bad I am. I threatened the guy with a gun and this and that. I'm saying, man, this sounds bad. Then I smile because I see the district attorney from the Bronx there. He's my witness. He gets up and tells the trial commissioner his version of what happened. This trial commissioner went batshit. You treated this hero like this? He was chastised in front of the whole group. He walked out with his tail between his legs. Still don't get promoted because there's no list yet. That August, I get promoted to sergeant.
Vernon, what do you think it was? I listen to a lot of podcasts having to do with NYPD, and you guys are such a big department. There seems to be a lot of politics in and out. Do you think it was just jealousy from the guy? What do you think it was that he wanted to go after you?
I think I insulted him when I laughed at him when he told me, kid, tell me what happened. And he looked at me like, are you kidding me? That's what I do to criminals. But he was a vindictive bastard. You know how some people get off on other people's pain and stuff? I wouldn't be surprised if he had notches on his belt for how many people he screwed. Okay, because that was his personality. He was out to get me, that was it. And certain people in the Internal Affairs Division, I'm not saying all of them, certain people are vindictive bastards. They never could be cops. They were scared to be on the street. But they're like the Pharisees at the time of Jesus. They're the first people to come up with the rules, okay? They're right, you're wrong. And those people are they're just bad people. I mean, I've dealt with people in internal affairs, and some are good people and some are different. It's not the same as being in the street, but when you're a personality like me, I'm straightforward. I'll tell you what I think. That's the problem. Sometimes you got to keep your mouth shut, but I couldn't help it. I said, "Well, you fucking kidding me?" You know. And it was even funny because when I became a boss, it was even better because now I'm in charge of people, and I have people over me, and invariably there'd be somebody in headquarters who come up. I think we should do it this way. I said, can't do it like that. going to get some people hurt on the street. You can't do it that way. Well, that's the integrity way. The integrity way. There's just, you're either integrity, you even have it or you don't have it. Because I got a big kick out of some of these people. Like when we had the NAP commission and we had the SIC, and this is, a lot of people went to jail. A lot of people get arrested. But here's the thing. I was involved with the mafia, with wiretaps and stuff for years. I'm working Operation Uncover, all right? And the rule was, no matter what you hear on this wire, we do nothing to interfere with this investigation, because we've got the 5 major crime families are in this investigation. You would be surprised the names of people who showed up on the wire. Judges, lawyers, cops, bosses, being mentioned that would require internal affairs. The word was, well, when we complete the investigation, internal affairs is going to investigate this. So when the investigation was completed, guess what? Nothing happened. So I says, no problem. I kept notes. So later on, when I become a boss, some of the biggest thieves became the biggest integrity officers, right? They're preaching integrity. Try to fuck with my men? Hey, Captain, don't fuck with my men because I know what you did. You're a wise guy, damn it. I said, yeah, but he kept notes, so don't fuck with us. So that's the kind of boss I was. Now you can only do that so much before you hit the wrong person. But that was my reputation.
Okay, we're definitely going to hit on a leadership with you, Vernon, but give me an idea, why did you go into law enforcement?
I had a vocation to become a New York City cop. Not a homicide detective, a New York City cop. That was in my mind. And if you look at everything I did as I grew up, I was going in that direction. Lifeguard, ambulance driver, security. I'm heading that direction. I didn't tell anybody in my family, okay, because I know that they wouldn't want me to become a cop. The only person who knew I was becoming a cop was me and my girlfriend, the gal I married, all right? I met her on the beach as a lifeguard, and we're still married because we love each other. Well, she worked in the city as a secretary, and she would pick up the newspaper, which was called The Chief, and we would follow, you know, when classes were going in, et cetera. I was in Iona College, and I was in my 3rd year, and I was taking business, because they didn't have criminal justice in those days, so I'm taking business, marketing. It's my 3rd year, and I haven't picked a company to study under. So the brother, Catholic brother with the collar, calls me to his office, Mr. Geberth, you haven't picked your practicum for the summer. I said, brother, I have it all figured out. You do? Where are you going? It's NYPD. What? You're becoming a cop? You went to Iona College and become a cop? I said, whoa, slow down, brother. See that collar you got around your neck? That's your vocation. The NYPD's mine. And it turns out it was.
But Vernon, where do you think that came from? Did you have an interaction as a kid when you were growing up? Were your parents, pro law enforcement?
I had an uncle that was a cop, but he wasn't in the city.
Okay.
But I had this, don't forget, I was a Walter Boy, a Boy Scout, a lifeguard. I mean, maybe I'm the last frickin' Boy Scout, I don't know. But that was my desire to do that. And when I came into the NYPD, I heard about this tactical patrol force, and that's what I strove for. And then when the tactical patrol force, I became a detective. So it was like, it's an ongoing thing. It's unfolding.
When did you, 1965, is that when you started with NYPD?
Yeah, so here's what happens. We're following the chief, my junior year. So we're engaged to be married. So we set up, let's get married in October of '64 because the next class going in is December of '64. So I'm planning my life and my marriage around the NYPD. In the interim, I got hired as a World's Fair cop. That was great. I'm a cop in the New York World's Fair. Now, the New York World's Fair was actually a separate police department under the Pinkerton Association. All of the bosses were NYPD retirees or people on leave, and all the procedures were NYPD procedures. So instead of having a UF form, it was a WF form. So it was really funny because I'm a young kid, and we have to be trained for the World's Fair Police Department. The old time, listen, kid, don't fuck up, you'll get the real job. So, okay, all right. So here I am in the World's Fair, and we go on a honeymoon. And we come back from our honeymoon, 1964, we were in Bermuda. I come back, I'm laid off. Laid off? I couldn't believe it. I'm laid off for the season. I've had a job since I was 12 years old. What am I going to do? My wife says, calm down, I have a job. I drove a cab, I drove trucks. As luck would have it, I see an ad for UPS. They're hiring people for the Christmas season. So I said, okay, you have to be up there at 6 o'clock. So I'm up there at 6 o'clock next morning. Nobody picks me. Next morning, nobody picks me. Come up there, 5:45. Nobody picks me. Fourth time, hey, I see you hanging around. You can work on my truck. Well, let me tell you something. Not only did I get my own truck, I got my own route. I was a UPS guy. That's it. It's the end of the season. I mean, Christmas season. Everybody's getting laid off except 5 people. I'm one of the 5. They find out I have 3 years of college. We're going to send you to UPS management school down on 43rd Street. I don't say nothing about the police department. I'm going to become UPS manager. So I go there. February, I get called from the World's Fair. Listen, come on back, we're going to make you a sergeant. I said, a sergeant? Yeah, we're going to put you in charge of liquor license inspection. I said, yeah, why do you pick me? Because I'm a stupid kid. I'll go out there and I'll do it in lickety-split. I'll inspect it. You get some old-time Irish cop, he'll be at the bar all day. So then I get called to the NYPD, April 30th, 1965. And I begin my career.
Let's talk about a couple of the cases you dealt with homicide, because I'm going to ask you a question about ultimately how you ended up dealing with some of these stressful situations. But tell me about the Bronx Bathtub Torture case.
I'm sorry?
The Bronx Bathtub Torture case.
Oh, okay. I was in 7th homicide. By that time, I'm pretty well versed in homicide investigations, what we got to do. We get a call from the 44th precinct, and they're reporting that they have a victim, a man in the bathtub. So I respond, and as luck would have it, again, there's a lot of abandoned buildings in the Bronx, and it looked like something out of World War II from Berlin. This was a pretty good building, because the buildings were built by artisans to last. They weren't built to fall apart like we build stuff today, it falls apart in 2 years. These buildings were built to last. And there were a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses in the building. They kept it clean. Now, this man was a working man, and I'll get into it later, but when we get there, he's in the tub, bloody water, and the apartment's been ransacked. So I begin the investigation by, let's talk to people in the building. We find out that prior to our arrival, there were a number of black males carrying furniture and other stuff from the apartment. Because these people, they're decent. They're going to be witnesses. So we begin the investigation, and we don't have much to work with. I could see it was a horrible death. The guy was drowned in his own bloody water. It was terrible. What happens, as we're at the scene, we get a call. We have another homicide. This is 7th homicide. We get homicide calls all the time, but I see this as a major case. So I said, send a night watch, because we're here, and I want every detective on duty to respond to this case, because I want to canvass the building, I want to find information. Now, later on when we come back, we find out that the other homicide, we didn't know at the time, but when we start comparing notes, we find out that homicide was related to our homicide because they were fighting over who got what. So one guy gets shot and killed, the other guy ends up at a hospital in Manhattan. So our guys go over to talk to him. He's not going to talk. I said, oh yeah, well, you're not going to talk, you get charged with homicide. So now he's talking. We have street names. And as luck would have it, one of the people in the building recognized a female that was part of this crime. So let's get back how it began. He's a working man in Manhattan. He's a building engineer. And he's a bachelor. And he eats at the local restaurant. So these two gals decide, hey, listen, he's a working man, he's probably got a stash, because in the mentality of these street urchins, anybody who works has got money. So they talk him into going back to his apartment to smoke some dope, this and that. They're setting him up for a push-in robbery. When they get back to the apartment, one girl says, I'm going to go out and buy some pot, and some angel dust. She gives her some money. When she comes back, she unsecures the door. He's very conscious of people breaking in, so he secures the door. Meanwhile, the other girl excuses herself to go to the bathroom. Next thing you know, she undoes the door, in come 5 thugs, and this poor guy goes through hell, looking for his stash, right? Torturing him, putting his head in the water. Terrible, terrible, terrible situation. Anyway, he had about $1,000 worth of tools. But what would these idiots know what to do with tools? Because they don't work. But that was the real stash, his tools. Well, by now we have information. Within 2 or 3 days, we pick up one of the girls, because we have a picture in her yearbook, and we get information on the other gal. And in the meantime, we're getting street information, street informants. And we got the name of the leader, the guy who's leading it. Well, we're putting together a pretty good case. We got the 2 girls under arrest, and we had a pretty good idea on who the other people are. And here's a clinker. This informant that we had we weren't handling. The lieutenant was handling. He never had an informant before, so he was very enamored by the fact that he has an informant. The informant's playing him both ways, okay? He's playing him, and he's giving up half information, and we're trying to react to it. Anyway, we get information on who this team is, and the word is they're leaving the city because of the heat. There's a lot of press on this because of how this went down and the torture and everything. And the word is they're going to go out, they're going to leave the city. So they're going to hit a numbers place in Mount Vernon, New York, which is a city above the Bronx. And they're also doing another stash, so they're getting money. And the word is they're going to Georgia. And they're leaving on this midnight bus or whatever. sounds like a song, the midnight bus to Georgia. Anyway, they're on their way to Georgia. So I get the information, I put out a teletype, and me and a detective race out to the airport to jump on a plane to beat them to Georgia. So they have to connect to Atlanta to get to where they're going. And the bus comes in, they're not on the bus. It's pretty embarrassing. Now I'm going to have to explain how I jumped on a plane without authorization. So I come back to the Bronx, and the informant is arrested now. So it's me and this other detective, and the informant calls from jail. I want to tell you the truth now. Now, you ain't telling us shit. You sent me on a goose chase to Georgia. And by the way, Detective Ralph is very upset, and you want to make him upset. No, please, So we go to the Rikers Island to talk to him. Now, he had been arrested for robbery, and the district attorney said, you can't speak to him. Well, I can't speak to him about robbery, but I can speak to him about homicide. So he tells us, I really lied. They're on their way to California. I said, what are you, out of your freaking mind? You sent me to California. So now we corroborated. They're on their way to California. So I'm putting out another teletype. So the people downtown say, I thought you were going to Georgia. I said, I made a mistake. They're going to California. So I got this nationwide teletype. And it's really bad, Niles. It's really bad. I'm getting myself jammed up administratively like crazy. Anyway, the bus comes into California. They're not on it, L.A. I says, oh, shit, what happened? So we put our people on. The bus stopped at Indio, California. They got off in Indio, California, and being typical street black kids from the Bronx, they do a stick-up. Well, the problem is there's no blacks in Indio, California. They're all Spanish, so they get picked up. So now we have them, all right, in Indio, California. So we're going to go see if they're extradited. So the district attorney says, you shouldn't have talked to him. I said, listen, pal, I know the law just like you know the law. I didn't speak about robbery, I've spoken about homicide. All I need to know from you if you're going to extradite. Well, I'm not going to extradite. I said, that's not the question. Are you going to extradite these people back to New York for the homicide? Because if you can't make that decision, call somebody who can, because we have them in jail in Indio. So his boss tells him, you got to extradite. So next thing I know, the lieutenant decides, I'm going to go to California. I said, what do you know about the case? I'm the lieutenant, I'm going. All right, he said, you're the lieutenant. Meanwhile, the captain goes, no, lieutenant, you're not going any place. You're the CO. Geberth's going with his team. Well, I'm not going to pay overtime. I'll take a chart change. What about your detectives? They'll take a chart change too. What these administrators don't realize is that people are loyal to their boss. I'm a squad sergeant. These are my men. We do things together. If I can't go, they can't go, right? They all waive overtime. So we go out to California and get a lot of publicity. Thank God. There was a newspaper picture of all of us walking the back. That became very important because while we were away, one of our bad guys made a corruption allegation against one of my detectives that he did a drug deal on such and such a date. Oh yeah? Well, here he is in Indio, California. So we beat that. But that was an interesting case.
Yeah. I just, it's fascinating, Vernon, because it seems like the more you do your job, the more you're getting in trouble almost. There's always somebody that wants to.
Absolutely. Let me give you an analogy. The NYPD okay, is like a big lake. And under the lake are the detectives, the cops, the detective sergeants. On the lake are lieutenants in a canoe. And on the houseboat are all the captains and the chiefs. And they don't want to be disturbed by the ripples of the water, so the lieutenants are supposed to beat the people down in their canoe. That's the best way to describe it. You're making waves. You're disturbing the houseboat. That's what I was doing.
Okay, so, all right, before I ask you the other question, let's just talk about leadership with you, okay? Because I thought we discussed this prior, and you have the same idea that I do, which is, and you mentioned this, which is surrounding yourself, going out with the people that you think were the best at each job, and I don't want to say stealing, but just learning from each one of those guys. And you said, look, as a boss, you surround yourself with people that are better than you, and they're going to make you look good.
Absolutely.
Why don't most bosses realize that? Because I've had bosses that don't think like that, that just want to beat you down with the canoe back down to the water.
Because they're not confident in their own abilities. Some people, when they get promoted, their personalities change. Okay? I'm the boss. You're the boss. Okay, good. Well, last week you were just the same as me. Now you're the boss. Let me tell you something. It's people being people, and it's all departments. It's all the same. There are certain people who shouldn't become bosses because they're anal, and other people because they're bullies. Okay, and they want to be in charge of other people. If you're a smart boss, you engage the people you have, and you make them part of a team. Now, how do you pick people? I used to use this in when I'm training. I say, listen, you want to know who good cops are? Get all your people in the room and say, okay, because there are good cops, mediocre cops, and fucked up cops. But we don't tell the general population because we don't want to scare them. But you want to find out who they are? Everybody in the room, okay, everybody pick a partner. The asshole that's left over is the fuck up. That's all. That's it. That's my leadership principle.
Okay. Do you think leadership is innate or learned?
It's a combination.
Okay.
It's a combination. It's based on your personality and also your confidence, your self-confidence. Because for the first time, you're now in charge of other people. You have a responsibility for those people, right, to protect them, but also to give them proper direction. One of the highest compliments I ever got, especially from people who complained about, Geberth said this, Geberth said this. Geberth never told us to do what he didn't do himself. Okay? So you lead by example. You're not afraid to get down and dirty and do what you got to do. That's part of the job.
Where do you think your leadership skills came from?
My skills?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Going back to when I was a lifeguard, working as a team.
How about parenting? Do you think anything your parents instilled you translated later onto leadership?
No, not really, because we were poor. We came from a poor household. I mean, I had to work. If I wanted a pair of jeans or if I wanted to buy a pizza, I had to work. I had to have a job. I had a job when I was 12 years of age. But I learned early on, like, I became a newspaper boy. Now, as a newspaper boy, a lot of people don't notice, but you have to pay for the papers. Then you deliver and collect. Some people didn't pay. Why? They were pissed off at the newspaper. Well, listen, you're not hurting them, you're hurting me. Sometimes I have to go back 2 or 3 times to get paid. So welcome to the wonderful world of business. So I'm learning responsibility and others, but also at the same time, while I was doing that, I was building the route. I was getting new customers, and I would go out to different routes to cover. I actually became newspaper boy of the year. They gave me a thesaurus and an atlas or something. That's great. So, and then different jobs that you do. You find out, you got to work together or you can't get the job done. So I don't know if I don't have any insight to that. But the responsibility, I mean, you do what's right. I was an altar boy. Okay, as an altar boy, I had to get up 6 o'clock in the morning to do mass at the convent, all right? Back in those days, we had real snowstorms. I'm talking about 2 or 3 foot of snow. I got to pray through the snow to do the early morning mass at the convent. right? The whistles blow, the fire whistles blow to indicate school's canceled for the day. Not me, right? So I said, but I got an early start to shovel people's sidewalks. I'd make money shoveling people's sidewalks. So I was working all the time. I have no ego when it comes to work. I'll shovel shit. Because I needed to have money to be able to do things. Like, you want to buy a pizza? You want to do this? And later on, when I got my car, when I was 16 years of age, I had my driver's license, and I saved enough money to buy a used car. So now I can expand my horizons. Now I can go elsewhere to get jobs. So I ended up working as a parking lot attendant at a beach that we used to go to. And I said, well, I'd love to be a lifeguard there, but I'm only 16. Then 17, I'm in the YMCA, I'm taking life-saving. 18 years of age, I get picked to be a lifeguard. But it was funny because I made a lot of friends. And when I became a lifeguard, people remember, oh, that's Vernon the lifeguard. Used to be Vernon the parking lot attendant. So it was all good stuff.
When you were coming up through NYPD, at what point did you decide to promote?
Well, I decided to promote early on because I took that sergeant's test and I scored very well. The problem was when it came time for the lieutenant's test, I was so busy doing police work I couldn't study. But I got promoted to detective sergeant and I got lieutenant's money.
But why did you initially want to become a supervisor, a boss?
Oh, because I didn't like some of the supervisors I had, that's why. So I could do a better job than this.
Okay. So once you started to promote, did you have a goal? Did you go like, one day I'm going to be this level? Or you just said, I'm just going to do the best job I can? And
that's a good question, because what happened when I got the homicide and I got to be a lieutenant commander, you couldn't blow me out of that job. Why would I take the captain's test? I'm getting captain's money, overtime, I'm doing what I like to do, I'm in homicide heaven. But then along came the Larry Davis case, and that's going to be the end of my career. But listen, while I was a commanding officer, I did what had to be done, all right? I organized the command, right? The way it's had to run like a well-run machine. I didn't tell you this part, because of the textbook, when I got promoted to lieutenant, okay, I was supposed to be retained in the bureau because I was their top homicide sergeant. Okay, the chief wanted to retain me. But the chief of detectives, little shit, was jealous and pissed off that I wrote a textbook, right? He thought I should take the manuscript down, genuflect, and give it to him, put his name on it. Well, Jimmy, the chief of detectives, was a vindictive little prick. I got promoted lieutenant. He says, we're not retaining him. I'm going to teach him humility. So I'm going to learn humility. So here I am in lieutenant school, okay, because you got to go to rank school. So I'm in lieutenant school. And all the boogeyman outfits are trying to hire me. Internal affairs, field control, they all want to get me as a lieutenant because I have a good reputation as far as integrity. I said, no, I'm okay. You're going to wear a uniform. It's okay, my uniform fits. Well, you know, if you come in here, you don't have to wear a uniform, you can have days off, this and that. No, I'm fine. Put me in the shittiest precinct in the South Bronx. It was called the Alamo. That's how bad it is, right? So I report to the Alamo in a three-piece suit with an attaché case. Unheard of. Go up to my locker, I put my uniform on, but none of my medals, just my uniform. I'm on the desk officer, I'm going to learn to be a desk officer. So I'm going to be the ultimate desk officer. So I'm learning the process, what I have to do. And then I said, let me see how the platoon turns out. I said, that's not good. Sergeant, the platoon turned you out, you didn't turn them out. Let me show you how this is going to get done. So the next time I come on, I said, were you in the service? Yeah, Air Force, good. We're going to turn them out like the Marines. I put all my awards on, all right? You can see it on the back of the book. All right, platoon, the tan hut. What the? They haven't done this. They've been sitting around there. Get in line, open ranks, march, this and that. Go back to your lock, you look like a bum. Then you go out there, you're supposed to look professional. If you don't look professional, you're not going to get treated as a professional. So as each platoon comes in, because it changes, they're all watching to see what happens to the next guy, because the Lieutenant Geberth is fucking sending people back. Right? Get that shirt off. It looks like you look like a bum. Right? So now I have him shaped up, and it looks pretty sharp. This is the way they're supposed. This is the way I was trained. Okay, so everything's going good. And as luck would have it, one day an inspector comes in from the borough command. That's the headquarters for the Bronx borough. the word's out that the 4-6 precinct's very sloppy. They're not conforming to procedures. The inspector comes in, he sees me on the desk, he goes, "What are you doing on the desk?" I said, "I'm learning humility, Inspector." He says, "What a job." He said, "I hate to tell you this, but I'm here to turn out the platoon." I said, "No problem, let's go back." Go back. Open ranks, running. Holy shit, what the hell's it? I says, "Hey, made him into TPF, Inspector." "I can't wait to go back and tell the chief. This is unbelievable. This was the worst command in the Bronx." But what I used to do, I used to give them a little talk before they went out, like on Sunday. I said, "You know, today's Sunday, and the rumor is that Sunday's Cops Day." No, it's a bad rumor. Sunday's God's Day. You're out there working for God, so I want you to blah, blah, blah. So turn them out. So I was there for about 3 months when the chief of detectives retires, and I get right back into the bureau. So I go into one command first for 3 months, because you have to go through a command processing, the 42nd squad, then I go to the 40th squad. And with each squad, I did the same thing I did with every other squad. You're all in one unit. No more this, they come at 4 o'clock. No. Phone call comes in, you're all working for one unit here. I don't want to hear it's somebody else's case. It's our case. And that's the way I designed it. So I had a pretty good run. I had a good reputation too, because before I came into my permanent command, the word was already out. Because when I came to the first command, as luck would have it, 2 of the people that were there were dumped because of me from when I was a detective sergeant. So they're bad-mouthing before I come in, as they have no idea. So I do what I always do. It's a day tour. I come in 7:45, 7:30, get a cup of coffee, and I sit there and I wait. 8 o'clock, they're not there. 8:30, they're not there. They come walking out of the back room, they were sleeping. I says, "Good afternoon. You're supposed to be on the floor at 8 o'clock. Boss. I says, "You get a pass this time. But I'm going to be here early, and I'm going to be here late, and I want to see you on the floor." So it was funny. Then I went to the other command, and they were kind of funny, because my reputation arrived before I did, and they knew that I was going to shape up the command, because they had the boss's office in the back, and they had the lunchroom in the front. They said, nah, the lunchroom's in the back, the boss is in the front, so I can see what you're doing. And one of the guys put together this big sign, G-O-D, God, Geberth on duty. So I come in, the first thing I did when I came into that command, it was the 4-0 squad. They're great guys. I love these people, because I'd worked with them before in different units. They do a homicide assessment. Hey, listen, there's something wrong here. They've got Team A, Team B, Team C. How come TC has 70% of the homicides? Hey, boss, that's the way they come in, you know. Nothing we can do about that. Are you kidding me? I was a detective sergeant. You can't have one team with 70% of the work. From now on, Team C is off the chart. They don't catch. If a homicide comes in when they're working, the other team comes in 4 hours recall. You get overtime. You got the case until we level this out. That's how you do it. You get equal distribution of labor, all right?
But Vernon, where do you think okay, so like for example, you're talking about equal distribution of labor, you're talking about being a desk sergeant, which I would think a lot of guys would go, I'm not doing that, I'm above that. Where is that coming from? I mean, it gets back to the initial question I had about your leadership style. Like, how do you get to that precinct and go, you know what? I'm going to learn. I'm going to be the best desk sergeant. Where does that come from?
I was a lieutenant. I'm going to be ultimate desk officer lieutenant. Where's it come from? It comes from here. It's got to be in you. It's got to be in your heart and in your mind.
Yeah.
So no, the way I came into this operation. This is a paramilitary operation. Conduct yourself like that, okay? Be proud of what you do. So when I was never a desk officer, Niles. I didn't know nothing about being a desk officer. It's a pain in the ass. I got to be responsible for radios and this and that. But it was kind of funny, because I did get introduced to the desk when I first made sergeant. Because when I first made sergeant, I was assigned to a precinct. I never worked in a precinct. Excuse me.
No problem.
So let me tell you what happens. I'm in sergeant school, okay? And at the time, it's a NAP commission. They're talking about corruption and this and that. So the lieutenant said, I don't want any of you sergeants to join a sergeant's club. So I raised my hand. What's wrong with joining a sergeant's club? What are you, a wise guy, damn it? The oldest guys start laughing. Hey, boss, he's one of them TPF cops. He doesn't know what you're talking about. The Sergeants Club was something where the sergeants, they would split money, that people would pick it up, and everybody get a piece of the thing at the end of the month or every 2 weeks, whatever it was. It was called a club. It's corruption, all right? So I report to this precinct. I never worked in a precinct. I'm on the desk. First thing I did, right? I turned out the platoon the way they're supposed to be turned out. They look at me like I have 3 heads. We don't do that here. Now you do it. I'm the sergeant, you're the cop, okay? So now I turn out the platoon. The third night, that captain that's trying to screw me, he's not finished with me. I'm on probation on the desk. In comes a corruption allegation about somebody in the precinct. Now, there was an SOP, that's a standard operating procedure, or it started as an interim order, then it became a standard operating procedure. If corruption comes, this is what you got to do. You got to notify internal affairs, you got to get a number, blah, blah, you make a blotter entry. So I talk to the people on the phone, I'm trying to get information, they won't give me information. I say, okay, I do what I'm supposed to do. I call internal affairs, I get a number, I make a blotter entry. Okay, it's lunchtime. So let me show you what a jackass I am. My wife would make me a brown bag sandwich and I'd get a Coke from the machine. I'm in the sergeant's room having my Coke and my supper. Within storms Sidney Cooperstein, the biggest scumbag in the police department, with 2 chiefs and a captain. They seize the blotter, they take over the command, shut the TS, where's the sergeant? So I come walking out, yeah, what's up? Did you receive a corruption complaint? Yes, sir. What'd you do? I said, follow the order, put it in the book. He was so pissed off, it's almost like he wanted to get me. He couldn't have me, but shook everybody up in the command. I said, man, these guys are worse than the fucking people in the street. At least in the people in the street, I know which way they're coming from. This is scary as shit. So I passed that one. Now, that's the first set of night tours. So now I'm on alert. Now it's my first set of 4 to 12s. So I got a driver, because I'm a sergeant, I got a driver. Jobs are coming over, I'm responding, there's nobody there. I say to my driver, where's all the other sectors? I don't know, boss, I don't know. I said, oh, yeah, okay. All of a sudden, a burglary in progress comes in. By the time I get there, there's 3 cars at the place, at a garment store, helping themselves to shirts. I said, what are you, the fucking burglars? Put the fucking shirts back, right? Look, right? The owner comes in. You're going, oh, Sergeant, you want a shirt? I said, no, we're not the burglars, we're the police. Shirts are back. He couldn't believe it, because every time his alarm went off, he lost shirts, right? Not with Vernon. Talk about a small world. He's a Jewish garment guy. Well, the guy who built my house is a Jewish contractor. They know each other. I don't know how. They're talking about this sergeant named Geberth. He goes, oh yeah, he's a straight shooter. all the way up in my county where I live, they're talking about this. So now I come the next night. I said, that's it. This is bullshit. All you guys in the car, you're out of your cars. You got foot patrol. Following people in the cars. I want active. When I call for cars, I want to see cars. All right? Because in those days, a sergeant covered 3 precincts. Not like today where you got captains crawling out of your ass. Right? Back then, a sergeant ruled the street. You can't do that. Me sergeant, you cop. It's done. So now I got these young kids, and we had a big problem, 42nd Street, with the pros and the pimps and all this, and they would hang out at the diner, and they'd carry on like fucking animals. So what I do at 3 o'clock in the morning, hit the diner, right? Toss them, get their guns, right? Take their cars, right? I was having a ball. You can't do that, right? This is upsetting the apple cart. So I come in for my first day tour. Lieutenant Coon, Vernon, what'd you do with the sector card? I threw them out of the cars, they weren't working. You're not in TPF anymore, Vernon. They bought those cars. They bought those cars? Yeah, they're part of the system. They collect from the tow truck drivers and this and that. I'm upsetting the system. So now it's the day tour. I'm Sergeant 3, working the days. All of a sudden we get a call. Respond to the so-and-so administrative code violation. Administrative code violation? I've been locking up people for rape, robbery, and guns. What is this bullshit? So I asked my driver, what is this? Oh, they hung their advertisement signs on the flag, on the lamppost. It's a violation of the administrative code. I said, so what are we doing here? Oh, his attorney's there, and we're supposed to give him a summons. I said, we're not correcting the condition? I said, watch what we do. We pull up in front of the store. I jump up on top of the car, take out my knife. I cut the flags down. Listen, motherfucker, you put those flags up again, I'm locking your ass up. Where's your attorney? Here's your summons. That's a privilege in lieu of an arrest. We get back in the car. I'm not in the car 5 minutes. Sergeant 3, 10-2, forthwith. I come back to the precinct, and I got this Inspector Weinstein. The only reason he's there, he's Jewish, and it's the Jewish garment district. He's walking around in circles. He's a motherfucker. What is this motherfucker? I said, I corrected the condition, Inspector. Get in my office. He says, what are you doing? I said, I corrected the condition. He's like, listen, you were one of those TPF Nazis, right? I said, yes, sir. You want to go back to TPF? He said, yes, sir. You're back. I have my own rabbi. So now I'm back in TPF as a sergeant. I loved it. And I had a good run in TPF. I had my driver, poor Joe Cortelli. He had like one award or something because he always drove the sergeants. Not me. I make arrests. I keep changing drivers. By the time I finished, 1 year later, he had 2 commendations, 3 meritorious, and excellent police duty. He's telling everybody else, this Sergeant Geberth's going to get me killed. He's some sort of super cop.
Now, Vernon, okay, so as a sergeant, you start getting a driver.
Yes.
Okay. Why did they do that? Why did they give you a driver?
Because the driver is supposed to record the activities of the sergeant. So when you arrive at the scene, you take an action as a supervisor. The recorder is supposed to indicate the area that we're there. That's how it works. You have a sergeant.
Okay. So Joe, and not, I mean, I say this lightheartedly, he's not complaining about you. He's just like,
oh, he's like, he can't believe it.
yeah, like why is a sergeant doing this?
Yeah, sergeants don't do this. Yeah, I do. I got 2 more commendations while I was a sergeant. Again, fire rescues, I did all kinds of stuff. I rescued a baby. I mean, it's with the police.
Vernon, tell me about this, because this is in relation to, I think, a book and a movie in regards to Hannibal. But tell me about the case, the man who fed his face to the dogs.
Oh, yeah, that was when I was a detective sergeant. Well, you already know from our talk in the last few minutes, I'm into forensics, I'm into documentation. Anything that's a little bit different than the norm, I'm anxious to like record it and find out what happened. It was interesting because that day we got 2 calls simultaneously. One from North Central Bronx, they want detectives to respond because of an assault, and one from the crime scene by a sergeant. He's maintaining a crime scene protection as I directed. So because the hospital's on the way to the crime scene, I stop off at the hospital and I see this mess in the emergency room, all gauzed up, and I said, oh wow, this guy's, what a mess. Let me go to the crime scene. I go to the crime scene, the sergeant's there, and everything's cordoned off. He tells me, we had some dogs here. We had a corral, a female shepherd and 2 puppies. They're locked in the back room. I said, so what happened? He said, I don't know. He said, this might be an assault. He said, we don't have any information. I look in the bathroom, there's a couple of pieces of blood in the bathroom and some topical first aid cream, which I don't believe will be sufficient for these type of injuries. I get into the living area, right, and there's a leather recliner, and it's loaded with blood, and I see a smashed mirror. I'm saying, this guy was under the influence of PCP, all right? He fried his mind. Apparently, whatever was going on in his mind, he smashed the mirror, he dug out his eyeball, and then began to peel his face from his skull. His entire face is missing. Lips, right? There's no face in the scene. So I got to save face. Where's the face? The only explanation is the dogs. He was feeding the dogs his face. So I get the dogs, send them down to ASPCA, have their stomachs pumped. Because there has to be face here, there's no face. Right? Sure as shit, we come back with a bag of face. You can't do nothing with it because of the enzymes, you can't. Now I go to the hospital and the guy is surrounded by doctors. Oh, I says, I got to get a statement, get that gauze off his mouth, right? They look at me. I need a witness. Everybody disappears. Nobody wants to be a witness. So I says, I see, it's a mess. You got to see it to believe it. It's like looking at a butcher shop. Anyway, I want to see if we can get a statement from him. So I get close to him and go, what happened to you? His mouth was going like a puppet. I says, holy shit, Vernon, you lost it. You're talking to a cadaver and the cadaver's talking back. It's all over. You need a psychologist. Anyway, he survived due to the amount of PCP in his system. It fried his brains. He'll become a ward of the state. But now I decide to follow through on this to see what they're going to do, because you can't take the pieces of face and put them back because the dog's enzymes. Anyway, they're going to reconstruct the face. So I learned about the procedure. It's called a pectoral flap. They cut the chest muscle and they sew it to the face. And after it grafts, it makes his own blood vessel vein, and they cut it. Then they graft it again, and eventually he has the semblance of a face. Only one eye, because the other eye is like, it's gone. He survived. Why put that into my textbook as a case study? Because it's very interesting. Unbeknownst to me, Thomas Harris, the writer, he's down at the FBI to learn about homicide, because the FBI knows everything about homicides. They have my book. So he's going through my book and he sees the case. Next thing you know, I'm getting calls from Associated Press, UPI. The movie comes out. Have you seen Hannibal? I said, I have no time for the movies. Have you seen the book? I have no. Your case is in there. Because the media has my book too. It seems like everybody has my book, all right? So I said, son of a bitch. So I write a letter to him. This is not a prelude to a lawsuit, but a request for an explanation, because I got two master's degrees and you're supposed to cite your sources. What happened to you? 6 months later, I get a Xerox note because he thinks his signature's worth money. I apologize for the oversight. In all future copies, your name will be mentioned. It's okay. Unbelievable. I should have sued him.
Okay, so Vernon, over the course of your career, we talk about, you just got done telling me a horrific story. You've obviously dealt with a bunch of homicides. I'm sure you saw bad things on the street, not to mention you're dealing with your own crappy supervisors who are treating you like crap. When you look back on your career, do you see society and people differently? I mean, you've seen the worst, not only from your own department, but from people in general. Has your views on society and people changed?
Yeah, a little bit, but before, not all the people I worked for were bad. I had an excellent chief.
Yeah,
What a tough nut he was.
Okay.
But he demanded you work.
Right.
See, some of these guys are trying to bullshit him. You don't bullshit bosses, you do your job,
right.
Okay? So, in answer to your question, I looked at everything as something that I had accomplished myself, but also in my position as a supervisor. Do I look at people differently? Absolutely, because later on, as I expand and I go across the country and I get involved with all these other cases, and you will see what people are capable of doing, and when you expect to see a monster, you see a person that doesn't look like a monster. It's fucking scary, because they walk among us, okay? We don't know what's going on in the minds of people, all right? I always cloak myself in the armor of God as a defensive mechanism. I say we work for God, but I go to church all the time and I pray. But by surrounding myself in this armor of God, I'm insulating myself from the evil that I'm dealing with, because if you deal with evil all the time, evil's going to leak into you. It's bad stuff. So you have to have an outlet. Now, ironically, my outlet is my book. Teaching, training, okay? Wherever I was, as a boss or as a supervisor, part of my job as supervisor was also instruction. When we had new detectives come in, right? I show them the morphologic changes of the body. This is lividity. This is rigor mortis. This happens after a certain amount of time. Put a glove on. Put your hand under the armpit. Is it still warm? Estimate time of death, okay? So all these things that I was building in as I was supervising was appreciated by the people underneath me. Then the other thing was, administratively, homicide's a bitch. There's a lot of work involved. There's a lot of paperwork, a lot of things that have to be done. One of the things I would do is when I had a new detective, if we had a ground ball homicide. Now, a ground ball homicide means we don't have to investigate who did it. Everybody's here, all right? So ground ball homicide gets assigned to the new guy. And by the way, you don't have to work to solve the case. The case is solved. By the way, see this pile of shit? This is what you got to do in the future. This is your manual, all right? This is your training manual.
You're saying using the cloak of God and your book. Would you say that those two things, or was there anything else that you dealt with how you dealt with horrible things? How did you decompress when you got home?
That's a good question, because you got to leave that stuff behind, because otherwise you're going to bring it home. I have little kids. I got a beautiful wife. I got these 3 children, 4 children now, and the bottom line is you don't want to bring that with you. So you gotta, compartmentalization is a good thing if it's used properly. I know it's a psychological term, but compartmentalization allows you to separate things from other parts of your life so you can deal with it, okay? Because when I'm at home, I don't want to be, talking about this stuff. Although I got to be honest, I used to talk to my wife all the time because she was a sounding board. Not the details, but just some of the idea what I had to go through, so you would know. But with, it's so hard to articulate because I don't have any secret formula. What works for me might not work for somebody else. But when you're 24/7 in professionalizing your profession and working to make it better, it's an outlet. Believe it or not, it's an outlet because you're getting away from the day-to-day bullshit and like some of the assholes I had to work for, right? And you're diverting it into something that's a product. Today, I know that I have probably solved more homicides in my afterlife, okay, with this book, than I ever could have solved because I have all these people out there that have been trained. I've taught 74,000 people practical homicide investigation. How do I know that? Because I keep good records. I'm good at documentation because you need to document. When you're in a department like the city of New York, you better document everything because it's going to come back to bite you in the ass if you don't. And that was my defense. Don't fuck with me. Gotta keep notes. But
let's talk about your family for a little bit. You've been married for 61 years. What's the secret?
My wife's the secret. I'm no longer the commanding officer. First thing you learn is a partnership. But let me tell you something. My wife's a great gal because she had to deal with not only raising the children when I wasn't available, because let's face it, police department, I don't have like weekends off and working days 9 to 5. I'm working all kinds of shifts. She would always prepare supper that no matter what tour I was working, we either ate in the afternoon or ate in the evening so that we had family time together, all right? And I mean, she's unbelievable. I don't know how she does it. She went back, she became a nurse, all right? And then she hurt her back because some of these people don't help themselves. She's in a rehab hospital, she hurt her back, and then she goes for social work. Then she goes for a master's degree, she becomes a clinical social worker, but she never missed a beat at home. She's putting meals on the table. At one point, when she was in college, she would drive back from college in the afternoon between classes and start supper and then go back to college so that everything be ready when the kids came home. So I married a superwoman, okay, there's no doubt about it. And the secret is, I mean, there's no secret. I mean, I got lucky. I married a good gal and she backed me up and I backed her up, like going back to school. She was afraid to go back to school. I said, no, you should go back to school. You can do this. She was a natural, all right? And then we always had holidays when we could together. I mean, everything was done. We didn't have any money. No money. We didn't go on exotic vacations and shit because we couldn't afford it. We'd take an automobile trip someplace, and take them down to the Jersey Shore, That was it. But then later on, as I'm developing this program and I begin going on the road and teaching, I'm able to pay my children's college tuition and everything, so everything's coming together.
You got married before you started the police department, though, right?
Yeah, well, we got married in anticipation of getting into the police department.
Do you think that made a difference, getting married before you started your law enforcement career, as opposed to waiting later on and getting married? And this is my point about this is she didn't know what to expect. You're working long hours. It just you guys just kind of grew into the career together, as opposed to later on you get married and all of a sudden the woman goes, well, I didn't count on Vernon being gone 23 hours working this homicide. Did that play a part in it?
Absolutely. I told you we grew together and we grew into the thing together because neither one of us expected or knew what to expect by going in. Of course, in the police department, back in those days, you had to be someplace at 6 o'clock in the morning. You didn't get paid to be there at 6 o'clock in the morning. You had to just get up early and be there. It's not like today, you get portal to portal and this and that, you get paid. And there was no overtime. That's another thing. We're struggling as a young couple. And there was no overtime when I was a cop. When I became a detective, the cops got overtime, but detectives didn't get overtime. Like I was always like at the wrong time, at the wrong place. It was very frustrating, but we got through it, you know. So,
How about your kids? Any of them go into law enforcement?
absolutely. My oldest boy became a detective in New York City Police Department, and he carried the same shield as I did as a detective, same gold shield, and he was a homicide detective. Now here's the story about boys. My second boy wanted to also go in, Robert. And I said, no, I don't want you in the same job because I've seen what happens to brothers in this job. Because the police department's a funny operation. They're always trying to compare one brother to the other and back and forth. You go to the state police. You're in the Air Force, you'll do good in the state police. So he went to the state police. Well, it turned out to be true because my son Vernon, who didn't want to be a boss, every time his name come up to be promoted as a detective, the son of a bitch who was the police commissioner wouldn't promote him because of me, right? I mean, these are vindictive people. I would never do that to somebody else's kid, but this guy was a scumbag.
That many years later?
Yes, that many years later.
Wow.
They carry grudges. They carry grudges like, so it reminds me of the Albanians, you know? They come over from Albania and they're still killing for something that happened in Albania.
Grandkids also?
14 grandkids.
But
So I either raise rabbits or Catholics.
Are any of your grandkids law enforcement though?
Yes, my two oldest grandkids are in the NYPD. All right, and the oldest boy, Thomas, is carrying the same shield that his father and his grandfather carried, with the last of the blue bloods. Okay, with a traditional police family.
Do you think if I asked, okay, obviously your grandkids can say that their dads influenced them, but if I asked your kids, did they join law enforcement because of you?
I would have to say yes because of something my wife told me. I remember when my son was in high school and the guidance counselor wanted to meet with my wife to talk about what he was going on in school. And she told my wife, your son idolizes his father. He wants to become a cop. I didn't know that. My wife told me, I said, oh my God, I didn't know that. I didn't want to influence to do that. No, he was influenced by that. He became a cop. And the other guy, the same thing. So, but the third boy, see, which proves the sperm count gets higher the more kids you have, he became a CEO of a major companies. So that's great. And my daughter, Daddy's little girl, I didn't want her to become a cop, but boy, she could be a cop. She's a tough kid. She's a realtor today, but she was an author. She wrote some books, Cop's Daughter books, which are based on, Cop's daughter's perspective.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. And she was making noises about becoming a cop, and I said, I don't want you to become a cop because I know what's in there. All right. Well, her husband didn't want to become a cop either, but she would have been a tough cop. She's like an old man.
Do your kids, do your sons, or your grandkids ever call you for advice, law enforcement advice?
No, they asked their father.
No, but your kids.
Oh, my son? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. We talk all the time.
Okay.
And that's how I found out about some of the scumbags who were taking things out on him. They didn't have the balls to come after me. Because what happened to him when he was a rookie, he was supposed to be in the Bronx, and this chief, I called him Rotundo because he was a big fat pig, he called his buddy in personnel and had my son transferred to the 26th precinct as a police officer. Well, thank God I was in the 2-6 squad and I had friends there that took care of him and protected him so I could get to another chief to move him back to the Bronx. But these are the kind of people who are vindictive. And I tell you, I have more respect for the fucking criminal than some of these people because they're just mean.
Okay, let's talk about a couple more stories. Tell me about Edna, Fumasoli, and Loretta O'Flaherty. Tell me about that case.
Yeah, I was detective lieutenant when that case came in. Kind of interesting how that case came in. I got a call from Kevin, one of my detectives in the 5-0 squad. I had been the CO of the 5-0 squad, and now I'm the CO of Bronx Homicide. I had a call early in the morning from the 5-0. He says, hey, boss, we got a case over in Greystone Avenue. It sounds like the type of case you better get involved with. See, that's the kind of cops that work for me. They knew this case was going to go to shit, and they want me there at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And so I responded with a detective, and he responded with his partner. I got to the location. It's in a high-rent district of Riverdale, New York, and we're looking at it as a push-in robbery. Now, that's the term that we use in New York, and where it comes from is years ago, the elderly people who were left behind in the tenements in the Bronx, when they would get their SSI checked, the local thugs would come to the apartment and push their way in, beat them up, take their money, and run. They call push-ins. So this is not the type of neighborhood where you have a push-in, but that's what it looks like to me. She's on the floor, she's off the wheelchair, and I could see this is a major case. I says, Kevin, thanks for calling me. I'm going to get every detective I have to respond in the Bronx from other commands. Let's start canvassing the building. So it was funny because it was a Friday, and every once in a while on Friday, Rotundo would like to have a luncheon conference, another excuse to eat. And we sit there for 2 hours and listen to bullshit. And this is the day he has his conference. So I'm saying, well, I'm not going to be at that conference. We're being very careful not to traipse on any evidence, but I can see that there's blood leaving from the apartment to an elevator on the second floor, so that's how they got out of the building. And while we're in the apartment, the phone's ringing, like somebody's trying to get through. Now, the cardinal rule is not to touch your phone in a crime scene. There's an exception to every rule. So I tell Kevin, let's see who's trying to get through. Turns out it's a MedAlert operator. Now, we don't know what MedAlert is. That's that commercial, help me, a phone and I can't get up. Well, we have no idea what that is. That's the MedAlert operator trying to find out what happened in the apartment because she got a signal from Edna Fumasoli. So she has the, it was funny because the detective doesn't want to give any information. He goes, who's this? What do you want? He's like, well, I haven't, and she's trying to explain, but she knows that we don't know what she's talking about. There's a device that she activates, and all right, can I have a number where I can call you back? Because I can't talk, I'll call you back. So he says, I don't know, she's talking about a MedAlert device and this and that, and she knows about the homicide. How's she know about the homicide? It's all the way out in Long Island, all right? Meanwhile, we're getting calls at the precinct, somebody in Far Rockaway who's a friend of the deceased, okay, has been alerted by MedAlert that her friend is in need of assistance. We can't figure out what's going on, it's crazy. Well, by this time I have detectives canvassing the building. Who shows up but this African-American girl, the healthcare aide, from Africa, an African-American. And she's being held downstairs because I have the whole hallway sealed off. I says, get her interviewed. So one of the detectives comes back and says, she's very nervous. Good, make her more nervous, bring her in, find out why she's nervous. Well, she had a reason to be nervous because when she was there on Monday, the black girl that used to be a healthcare aide that was fired for stealing showed up at the apartment, and she's not supposed to let anybody into the client's apartment, but she's a streetwise black girl, so she bullshits the African girl into oh, I want to say hello to Mrs. Fumasoli, I used to work for her, lets her in. At this point, she says to the African girl, go get me a glass of water. She goes to the old lady's pocketbook, she takes money out, she goes like this. The old lady's like, she leaves. So the old lady says to her, why'd you let her in? She stole money from my pocket. Oh my God, please don't report me. I'll get the money back. I'll give it to you don't ever let anybody in again. So the old lady's giving her a break. Doesn't know that she was fired for stealing. In the meantime, my chief calls me up. Why aren't you at the conference? I said, listen, chief, I won't be eating at your conference today. In fact, if I were you, I'd get up here and show your face. What do you mean? I said, well, let me tell you who's been here so far. The chief medical examiner, assistant district attorney, the borough president. I said, it might be smart if you show your face. So he shows up. Where's the crime scene? You can't go in there. What am I doing here? I said, showing your face. I said, nobody's in the crime scene because of forensic evidence, right? So he's all bent out of shape. He gets back to the Bronx borough. He hears from the police commissioner. What's going on in the Bronx? So I saved his ass by bringing him up there. Well, as we're putting together the information, we find out what MedAlert is. We actually have a tape of the actual homicide. It's horrible. It's one of the most horrible tapes because as she's screaming for help me, help me, the operator's trying to call 911, but she can't call 911 from Nassau County because it's a different borough, so she has to call the general information number of the NYPD. Dial a moron, okay? We hired the unhirables to answer that fucking phone. So all that time she's struggling to get the information, the woman's dying. I'm hearing her dying. Horrible. Well, we're going to isolate the voices on the tape later on. But before we get to that, so now we know about the healthcare aid. And we got a canvas of the building, and we're getting information. What happens is that when we find out it's a healthcare aid, we find out that the healthcare aid also had a client named Loretta O'Flaherty over on the Grand Concourse. She's found dead in her apartment with her throat cut. I says, we got a serial murder case going here. Because in the real world of police, 2 was a series. The FBI got away for 3 because they're famous but incompetent. So we have 2, we have a series. So I called Frank McDonald, he's got that case. Get over there, we're putting a task force together. Get down to Progressive Healthcare Service. The African girl's cooperating with us. She's gonna lose her job though. So we threaten them. Listen, if you fire the African girl, the next visit you're gonna have is NBC, CBS, and ABC, and you're gonna be out of fucking business, okay? You hired a perp as a healthcare aide. Now he's scared, right? We get the information, give me the client list. So I can't do that. So you don't do that? Guess what? You're gonna get a visit. I get the client list. Sure as shit, there were 2 more attempts on other clients. So now we gotta protect the other clients, put together a task force. In the interim, we get information, we get the tape, we isolate the tape. And what I did, I'm thinking out of the box again, while we're at the crime scene, okay, building management shows up. Be very careful in that apartment, it's a very expensive apartment. I said, oh yeah? There's an emergency service. I said, take out the wall by the elevator. I see a palm print. Take out the floor with the loan. He's jumping up and down. When I find out how MedAlert works, I says, okay, MedAlert, come to the apartment, hook it up, and play it. So I played it for 3 hours. You could hear that screaming voice across the entire apartment complex. Nobody wanted to get involved. Now we get an order to cease and desist. But I found a soul. I found someone who felt bad. I didn't want to get involved, but when I was coming home that morning, I saw the girl who used to work for Fumasoli coming out, running down the stairs. So she's a witness. So now we have her. Put her under surveillance. She's with a guy, an unidentified male black, because we know there's a male involved. Well, what happens is she's the weak link. I want to break her. So what we're going to do, we're going to bring her in for a psychological interview. We have the tape, and on the tape, I ain't doing it anymore. I ain't doing this anymore. I ain't doing this anymore. So we isolate that. Well, we had a picture as a healthcare aide, so I sent it downtown to our photo division to make up a wanted picture. Like, we know who she is. In other words, you're wanted. So when she comes into the precinct for an interview, first thing she sees is her picture as being wanted, and it's definitely her because it was based, right? Then we're going to interview her, and we're going to play the tape, and we're going to tell her this is your voice print, but really, what it really is an EKG. She won't know the difference. And we show the EKG. This is your voice. She breaks down. She gives it up, but she won't tell us who the male is. She's afraid. I'm afraid for my husband and for my baby. What are you afraid of? I'm afraid he's going to get him. How is he going to get him? I'm afraid I can't. We go to court. We find out who the perp is. It's her brother-in-law. The brother-in-law was married, okay, and she's married. The 2 crackheads were to get together when the working people went to work. When her husband went to work and that wife went to work, they'd get together, do crack cocaine, and then started doing robberies. So we want to pursue the male. We got the female under arrest. But district attorney doesn't want to complicate his prosecution because then we have to have a co-defendant to testify against. He orders the thing shut down. And of course, my chief rotunda orders me to shut down. I don't want to shut it down. But we're going to have to. Anyway, we got her, we solved the case. But this is the kind of, the politics you talk about is so frustrating.
Yeah.
Because the prosecutors don't want to prosecute unless they know they can get a conviction. They don't give a shit about justice or truth, right? Or what's right. No, they want to have a track record. So how do you think that makes it look for the police? We bring somebody under arrest, and then they get released. what do the people in the street think? The cops let them go, not the district attorney.
Yeah, so Vernon, let's talk a little bit about what's going on in New York now. I'm sure you follow the politics and kind of what's happening with the police department and the DA's office and everything else. What's, from an officer on the ground standpoint, how do they feel about these soft on crime DAs that are basically, they make these arrests and these guys are gone. There's like no cash bail, everything else. How do they deal with that?
Let me put it to you like this. I could not be a cop in New York today. I could definitely not be a commander, because these woke district attorneys that are in there to take the system down. And that's what non-prosecution, non-bail is. Now, I find it interesting that Como, who wants to be the mayor, is the son of a bitch who started no bail, okay? Now, as bad as Como is, he's better than Mondami, because Mondami is a Muslim radical. You can't use the police anymore in New York. It's terrible. Now, it began with, and I gotta be honest, even with Mayor Adams, he put all his cronies in his chiefs. Who ever heard of a chief having sex at police headquarters with a lieutenant who'd get an overtime to have sex with him? What the fuck is going on? This is the police department. City of New York. You have ruined a tradition. The greatest police department in the world has been brought to its knees by woke and DEI and misbehavior. Things that were intolerable when I was there are suddenly winked at. Okay? You can't police like that.
How much worse do you think it's going to get? It looks like Mondami's going to get elected.
Well, if Mondami comes in, it's all over. It's all over.
How about, I want to ask you this, because I've talked to some other NYPD guys, and I've always, when Giuliani was mayor, city got cleaned up.
Yeah.
But what was your take on Giuliani?
I didn't like Giuliani. Mm-hmm. And I was already retired, by the way. I've been out a long time. Listen,
Okay.
I'm an old guy now, you know.
Yeah.
I'm getting old. Giuliani did a good job, but he didn't do right by the police, because when it came up for the contract, he didn't give them their raise. He used them. So he's kind of like a typical lawyer, right?
Yeah.
Anytime lawyers make the rules, people get screwed. So but from a law enforcement perspective, he did a good thing in cleaning up the department. But we also had bail, and we also had judges that put people in jail. Now we have all these lunatics, these restorative justice and social justice people coming in. I don't get it. You know what I say? All these liberals who come up with all these great ideas, they need to get mugged, hurt, all right, and or murdered, and maybe it'll dawn on them that things are bad, because they live in a bubble, a nice little bubble that everything's fine. And the rich people travel in that bubble from one location to another, insulated by their limousines and everything else. And that's why the people in Hollywood are all anti-Trump, you know, because they're in a bubble, a toxic bubble, and they're breathing toxic air. Put them into the street, give them a dose, all right, to find out what's happened.
Well, my thing is, you complain about what's going on, but then you're the first one to call for the police.
Yeah.
So here's my rule. You don't like the police, you don't get to call for help.
You're right, and they always do, because they feel they're entitled.
Exactly,
It's entitled.
But they're the first ones to complain about the police and the bad that they're doing.
Yeah.
So,
well, like they say, what's the worst thing in this country is the affluent white female, okay? All right? They're all in these little sororities, right, of nicety, and they're making up for their whatever their issues are, because they all have issues, right? And they're making up for those issues by foisting their stuff on the regular society. I think it's disgraceful.
right. Tell me about the murder of Officer Michael Reidy.
Yes, Michael Reidy, young officer, 22 years of age. He was killed in his apartment by a robber, an armed robber, on a Friday night. Now, I had left the office because I had worked a day shift. It was kind of interesting. Now, this is after the Larry Davis case, so I'm on thin ice with the chief and everybody else.
And just so we know, Larry Davis case, we're going to talk about at the very end. But
Okay. What had happened, this was after the Larry Davis case, the detectives automatically called me home. Hey, boss, we have a police officer murdered. I'll be right in. I hear Big Mouth, Rotundo. Tell him to stay home. I'm going to handle this. I don't need him. Unheard of. What borough commander would not want the homicide commander to be present at a police officer murder case?
Right.
So, no problem, you're the chief. Saturday morning, I get a call from the zone captain. Vernon come in, he fucked everything up. I knew he would, because he's a fuck up. So now it's Saturday morning, I come in, I put together, I'm beginning from square one now, and I put together a task force of the 5-2 RIPT, anti-crime, Bronx homicide. By Saturday afternoon, we developed a robbery pattern that this might fit the homicide. By Sunday, we know who he is, we gotta find him. By Sunday afternoon, we have the suspect in custody, and my first grade detective, Louis Hernandez, gets a confession. Now, as it turns out, we have a major snowstorm, and I mean a real major snowstorm. He's under arrest, everything's working fine. We have to call the district attorney's office to authorize the arrest. Now, I never liked that procedure because I thought it was bullshit. You don't authorize shit. It's in the CPO, all right? Tells us when we can make an arrest. We know what we need to do. But no, this allows them to filter the case so that if they can't get a conviction, they don't accept it, all right? So so who comes walking in but this 5'2", galoshes wearing, Coke bottle glass idiot, that's the district attorney, with a Napoleon complex, right? And I want this, I want that, I don't get the handcuffs off, I don't want any detectives in the room when I talk to him. And I said, no, that's not gonna work. Detective will be there, he's a prisoner. This is a cop homicide. No, I demand it. I said, okay. He demanded. Louis takes the handcuffs off. They go into the boss's office. All of a sudden we hear this hysterical screaming, like an hysterical woman. The guy jumped out the second floor window of the 48th precinct. Now we have an escaped prisoner. We all bail out. I can see footprints in the snow going towards Webster Avenue. All right, so I send one team up to Tremont. I come around the other way. And I see a bus slowly making its way down Webster Avenue. This guy might have jumped on the bus. So I put the lights on the roof, swing over, stop the bus, jump on the bus at gunpoint. He's not on the bus. Meanwhile, 2 anti-crime cops from the 4A precinct come racing. What's going on, boss? I says, the guy that killed the cop escaped. There's nothing on the air. I don't want anything on the air. I'm not advertising we have an escaped prisoner. This is the description. Okay, so I go back to the command to damage control. What happens is those 2 anti-crime cops spot this guy on the street and they chase him into a tenement. He almost falls off the roof. Now, you and I both know if he went off the roof, they would have said we threw him off the roof, okay? Because that's the way the media is, and that's the way the troublemakers are. Anyway, they bring him back in and say, you guys did a great job. We're going to recommend you for the bureau, all right? Meanwhile, now Rotundo comes in from home and his deputy, I call him McNasty, Inspector McNasty. What a nasty fuck he was. Here's a guy that, you talk about evil people. This guy was no good his entire life. During the Knapp Commission, he got arrested for running a pad in Harlem, the 6th Division, all right?
What do you mean running a pad?
Running a pad means getting money, okay, from the bad guys to let them go.
Okay.
So he's running a pad. 2 of the sergeants that worked for him testified against him. He's gonna go to jail. Except his attorney was able to convince the jurors that they got their pension and they're lying to get their pension, and he beat it. He was acquitted. Now, you would think that if somebody went through something like that, they might discover religion, okay, become a better person, go to church. He came back twice as nasty. That's why I call him Inspector McNasty. So Rotundo says, we're going to give Louis Hernandez charge. I say, boss, he didn't lose the prisoner. The district attorney lost the prisoner. Well, now it's going back and forth. Louis Hernandez is a first grade detective, all right? He can't afford to have charge. I said, Louis, don't worry about it. Let's see. So then McNasty comes up. Now, maybe we should give the commanding officer charges too. I said, oh yeah, you're gonna give me charges? No fucking problem. Chief, let me talk to you for a minute. The chief in the other room. Listen, Chief, let's talk a little bit about this. First of all, I know all about McNasty, all right? But I was on Operation Uncover. Got a lot of names came up. You want to hear some of the names? Don't fuck with my man, because if you fuck with him, I'm going public, right? You're a wise guy, Geberth. I said, that's right, I kept notes. What are you gonna do about it? No charges. I saved them. But boy, now I am on really, really thin ice. Really, really thin ice, because I just poked the beast in the eye a second time. And he can't do shit, because if he does, I got a good base, because, there's only 25 lieutenant commanders at the time in the NYPD, and we have a very good base from the media and this people who know us because we're in the press all the time because of what we do. Plus my national reputation for writing a textbook. If I decide to say something, it's going to be published. So don't fuck with me. Anyway,
tell me your relationship with the media. How is that when you were on the job?
I had a whole section in my textbook on dealing with the media. The media today is out of control. The media is horrible. The media basically is like an anti-government, anti-American establishment. And pure journalism's out the window. Because if these people are journalists, they would be able to get both sides of the story. Now, I dealt with the media for years, and because of my position as a boss in Homicide, and don't forget, those are stories they want to cover, you develop relationships. And I had certain reporters I could talk to, and I would say, listen, this is off the record, and it would be off the record. Because off the record's how you get information out and be off the record, right? We don't want to make it part of the deal. Anyway, certain people, especially police reporters, there'd be a relationship, and over the years, it would, you'd become friendly. Not to the point that you could like bring them into you can't tell them everything, but so I'll give you an example. All right, listen, I can't talk about this now, but this is what I'm going to be able to tell you. But I promise you, when we have the information, I'll call you direct. Okay, so you make those kind of inroads, and I was very effective with that.
Yeah.
And so, I would tell people, listen, when you deal with the media, remember, right? They have bosses, just like you have bosses. When they report back, they have editors. Those editors may not honor the relationship or the agreement that you made. So make sure that you don't give, make sure whatever agreement you make is tenable and the editor will go along with it, all right? And that's how I was able to function.
When did you retire?
1987.
So that was probably before, I gotta imagine that's before the media has just gone completely sideways, right?
Yeah, well before that.
Okay.
The New York Times was always left of center. They're
Okay.
all assholes in the New York Times. I think they go to asshole school. If you look at their op-eds, they're like written by communists and shit. But even back then, the New York Times sucked. We used to call it the New York Slimes. Oh, is that the New York Slimes? Okay.
Okay. So Vernon, you were around long enough that you actually got to see the first DNA case in New York State. Can you tell me about the Vilma Ponce case?
Yeah, it was February 5th, 1987. I'll never forget it because the crime scene was a horror show. Vilma Ponce, 20 years of age, and her 2-year-old daughter, Natasha, was slain in the family apartment. Now, there was no forced entry suggesting she let somebody in, okay? Now, it was such a horrible scene, and there was so much blood because little Natasha tried to run away from the killer and was stabbed into the floor in the bathroom. Vilma was stabbed 61 times and her maternity top was pulled up so he could rape her. As you look at the crime scene, and you can see, and I'm reconstructing as we're looking at this, and I see Adidas sneaker prints walking across the blood, and I see droplets of blood on top of the Adidas prints, which means he cut himself. A lot of these offenders that get involved in these lust murders, and that's what this was, a lust murder, get carried away and the knife gets slippery and it goes up and it cuts their hand. Outside the door, there's a single drop of blood. Now I'm positive that the guy was cut because he's still bleeding as leaving the scene. Well, here's the problem. The husband's an asshole, okay? He's your best suspect. Why? Because he's an asshole. What does he do? He comes home from work that day and he sees the chain on the door and he looks into the apartment and he sees water on the floor. He thinks maybe his wife's water has broken. So he runs down to the bodega, which is a Spanish grocery store, to call his mother to tell her to call the police. Then he comes back upstairs and the chain is no longer on the door, but he doesn't walk in because he sees blood. That's his story. That story sucks, okay? Plus, he was arrested a year before for breaking his wife's jaw and he has a domestic violence charge on him. As far as I'm concerned, he did it, right? Well, part of the investigative process is the elimination as well as the inclusion. We are about to eliminate our primary suspect. He doesn't have a drop of blood on him. His sneakers are clean. And he was at work at 4:30. How do we know it was 4:30? Because the clock was pulled from the wall at 4:30. There's a bag of groceries on the couch with a receipt at 4:15 from the bodega downstairs. So it happened between 4:15, 4:30, maybe 5 o'clock. Something happened. Later on, we will find out that they had a problem with the lock, and they asked the superintendent to have the lock fixed. The suspect will turn out to be the assistant to the assistant superintendent who had his eye on this girl. Well, we don't know that yet. What we do know is we've eliminated the husband and doing a neighborhood canvass. I got people canvassing. His story was that when he came back to go up to his apartment, he saw a guy leaving the alleyway that had blood on his sneakers and blood on his left wrist. We thought that was a bullshit story. But now we're talking to other people in the neighborhood. They saw the same thing. This guy came out of the alleyway rather than come through the hallway to avoid bumping into anybody, goes across the street to a building, into the lobby, and into an alley. That's where he lived. He had an apartment. So the next day we're back canvassing the neighborhood, and we spot a guy cleaning the hallway at 3415 Knox Place. That's our suspect, but he's got a different hat. He doesn't have the same hairdo, different colored hat, but he's got a cut on his hand. I said, oh, okay. So Eddie Blake, one of my detectives, talking to him, said, well, how do you cut yourself? Oh, these mop buckets are sharp. Oh, yeah, I know about that. Would you come into the station house? We want to talk to you. He agrees to come into the station house. Eddie vouches the buckets, right? Takes them as evidence. There's no sharp edges. He doesn't know that. Get to the station house, and Andy Lugo, God rest his soul, he's no longer with us, one of my top detectives, first grade, is questioning the guy about his whereabouts. He notices that there's dried blood on his watch. This guy never took a bath, the pig. He asks, where's his sneakers? I never owned sneakers. Oh, yeah? Well, let me tell you something. From my perspective, I would suggest that he popped out his mother wearing sneakers. Everybody wears sneakers. Who are you kidding? Oh, you can go to my apartment and check. Well, he got rid of the sneakers. But we found that he shaved his head at his mother's apartment. There were green fibers from the hat that he was wearing. We collected that. Now, I need a watch. No problem. We got a drawer full of watches. Take your pick. Here's your watch, right? That's when I decide to go with DNA. I have been watching the development of DNA. In Lector, England, Dr. Alec Jeffreys had the first DNA case in the world. Now, the history behind that's kind of interesting. In 1983, a young girl, 15 years of age, became the victim of a rape, murder, and her nude body was found in the woods. Forensic evidence was taken, biological evidence. They had no suspects. In 1986, another young girl was found in a similar situation. Scotland Yard jumps on her right away. This is a serial murder. But in this case, they have somebody under arrest who has confessed, but he won't confess to the other murder. So Scotland Yard says, listen, let's get this Dr. Alec Jeffreys involved in this. He's a geneticist. Maybe he can help us with the evidence. So Dr. Alec Jeffreys gets the evidence, analyzes the evidence, takes about 3 weeks. He calls back, I got good news and bad news. The good news is I can molecularly and biologically link these two girls to the same offender donor. The bad news is the guy you have under arrest didn't do it. The first exoneration of somebody by DNA technology. Now, later, what they do, there's a good book called The Blooding by Joseph Wombar. It's a very good book. It tells the story. They get all males between 18 and 35 years of age to report to the town hall and give a blood sample. You just see that in the United States, right? In the ACLU and every other silly son of a bitch. Anyway, the perp pays somebody else to give blood in his name. The perp's name is Colin Pitchfork, which is an appropriate name for a perp. He gets his, right? He pays the guy to give the blood. The guy goes to the pub. This is on Colin. And so the barmaid's, what do you mean it's on Colin? He paid me to give blood. Oh, yeah? She brings him up to Scotland Yard. They come down, pick him up, take his blood. The first person ever convicted of murder based on DNA technology. 1986. Now it's 1987. Vernon's going to have the third case, because the second case was in Orange County in Florida. Tommy Lee Andrews, a serial rapist. I will have the third case, which is the first in New York State. and the blood comes back as matching the victims. And here's the problem, it's New York State. They litigate everything in New York State. Mario, the governor, very defense-oriented. He is reluctant to see DNA brought into the courtroom. Why? Because this either is or isn't. No gamemanship. He puts two people on a commission to see whether or not we should use DNA. Who does he put on there? Scheck and Neufeld from the defense attorney's office, the two litigators. It turned out to be a wild case. Joseph Castro versus New York State, half win, half loss. We couldn't lose it for inclusion, but we could use it for exclusion. Joseph Castro's convicted. But the power of DNA becomes quite evident to us in the Bronx Homicide Division, because 1 year earlier, another woman was raped and killed in another building that Joseph Castro was assigned to clean. It matches that. We had a serial killer right under our noses.
So, audience, I'm not going to remember what story this is, but it was either on Netflix or Amazon, and there is a story about DNA and the hell, ultimately, that scientist went through, the guy who invented DNA stuff, to finally prove it, and it is a fascinating story. So I'm so fascinated to listen to you tell that story after watching that.
Alec Jeffries was the hero. I mean, he brought a new technology, and I'm always looking for new stuff.
Yeah.
But the best part of that story is that test ended up costing $5,000. I authorized that bill realizing that I wouldn't be there when the bill came in. I'm a real murder cop.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Ultimately, I guess I want to say you're forced out, but anyway, explain to me what happens, Vernon. You're basically, it's as a result of the Larry Davis case, right?
Right.
What happens? Tell me about the case, and why does that ultimately lead to you planning your exit?
Well, Larry Davis was a thug and a crackhead. And Larry Davis and his brother were doing armed robberies of drug dealers and taking their drugs, beat them up. But then he began to expand his operations, and now he's killing the other drug dealers. So in October of that year, 1986, October, he commits a quadruple homicide in the Fort Apache district of the Bronx. 4 Hispanic drug dealers are found bound, executed, shot in the back of the head. Now, we have a lot of drug-related homicides. Don't forget, we're running like 400 homicides a year in Bronx Narcotics, so most of our homicides are drug-related. But a quadruple is pretty big. That's 4 at one time. Now, with processing the scene, because my procedure was to try to get anything forensically we could from the scene, so later on we could match it, was during the process we recovered a latent print on a cash box. Of course, that latent print, we don't know who it belongs to, but it's a good print. At the same time, our undercover information, our confidential informants are telling us about Larry Davis. We compare the latent print on the cash box. It comes back to Larry Davis. Now we know that Larry Davis committed that quadruple homicide. Well, Larry Davis is not around. Everybody's looking for him. In the meantime, what happens is that there's a drug ripoff in Manhattan, in Washington Heights, committed by Larry Davis and his brother. A uniform unit comes onto the scene and sees them escaping in a car. They're giving chase across the Alexander Hamilton Bridge, which connects Manhattan to the Bronx. They put out a report, shots fired, Bronx units join it. A newly promoted captain of police, obviously somebody who was never a cop in his frickin' life, orders the chase to stop. You do not order a chase to stop when shots are fired. Captain, whatever the fuck you are, all right? He orders it stop. We get the police car back, and the police car has ballistics matching the ballistics of the quadruple homicide from October in the 4-1 precinct. Now we know that Larry Davis is our suspect. I go to my chief, Rotundo. I says, Chief, let me grab this case as a fugitive case for my fugitive squad. We don't need elitists in the Bronx, Vernon. The local squad will handle this. He thought of us as elitists because we were homicide. I had 2 separate units. I had a fugitive unit, I had a narcotics unit. Our fugitive unit apprehended people a hell of a lot more dangerous than Larry Davis without a shot being fired. More importantly, the local squad can't handle apprehensions. They're up to their neck in homicides, for Christ's sake. But he didn't want to know it. So every time Larry Davis was located, they tried to put together an apprehension. So on November 19th, okay, 1986, police, emergency service, uniform, go to an apartment at 1231 Fulton Avenue, where Larry Davis is there with his sister, and it's very hard not to make noise with the ESU and units. Larry Davis knows they're coming. He's sitting back with guns. As the police open the door, he starts firing at the cops over his nieces and nephews. 6 cops got shot. We've never had 6 cops shot in the history of the city of New York. Now, during the course of the firing, one of the emergency service officers fires a shotgun with a slug that blows off the lock of an adjoining apartment, thereby affording Larry Davis an escape route that's not covered, and he gets out the back. Now, the fun begins. By the grace of God, there was a hospital across the street, Bronx Lebanon Hospital. The officers are going to be rushed into the emergency room for a triage. Let me tell you about Bronx Lebanon Hospital. If your partner brought you to Bronx Lebanon Hospital and you survived, you would kill your partner. That's how bad this place is. But they were triaged and they were moved to Bellevue Hospital. Holy shit. Now, I get a call at home that night. I thought my detective, Tommy McCarran, was dead. He was shot through the neck. I come racing in from past experience of handling police homicides, because I've handled police homicides. You don't go to the scene. You go to the command and you put together extraction teams. Go out there and extract these characters from their nests and find out information. We have information where Larry Davis might be. We're about to go into the street when in rolls Rotundo. No detective in the street by orders of the police commissioner. We don't want a racial incident. I said, what racial incident? We have attempted murder of cops. And I'm here to babysit you, Geberth. Well, I guess you're going to have to. At 5:30, he took his fat ass home. At 5:35, I was in the street with 12 hand-bit detectives, all of whom would deny they were in the street, because those are the kind of people that work for me. And we missed them by an hour. The next day, all hell breaks loose. Alpha Bravo, 12 hours on, 12 hours off. They come up with a complicated apprehension plan. No detectives in the street, you're ordered to detect. What the fuck is that? Right? And this case is going to be handled personally by the chief of the department. 30,000 man army, the chief of the department can't do this. So they put together the plan, an apprehension plan that'll guarantee that Larry Davis doesn't get hurt and everything's protected. They have emergency service, community representatives, uniform patrol, and has to be led by a super chief. We're the only department arrogant enough in the world to have the rank of super chief. And each of the super chiefs will be given a radio designation. The chief will be called Patton. The chief of patrol will be called Custer. The next chief will be called Halsey. Next chief, Nimitz. This is the police department with army helmets and stars. And the trucks cannot go forward unless there's a super chief. Wow. Every time we located Larry Davis and they sent a convoy in, they'd lose him. You can't drive down these streets with an unmarked car without raising up the neighborhood. They're coming in with a fucking parade. They can't believe it. I says, Chief, at one point I says, Chief, let me put my people on the perimeter. You're a fascist, Geberth. I'm a fascist? Yeah, okay. You get somebody from the news media, one of my friendlies called me up. Vernon, what the fuck's going on in the Bronx? I says, oh, it's quite obvious. We should be moving like lightning. Instead, we move like a large blue elephant. Someone downtown knew I said that. Not for affirmation, they knew I said it. Well, at one point, I had to go upstate New York to pick up my son, Robert, one who became a trooper. He's at Siena College. 12 hours on, 12 hours off, using part of my hours to go up to pick him up. On the thruway booth, there's a picture of Larry Davis. I said, that motherfucker wouldn't know how to get to the thruway. He's in an apartment in the Bronx or Harlem. And this is going on for 3 weeks. And I'm getting the pressure now. I'm getting pressure from my people. Boss. I'm getting pressure from above. Get more information, get more. They had a deputy inspector who was detailed to sit in my office and make sure I didn't go in the street. Okay? That's how bad it is. He's a good guy, but that's his order, right? So I would sneak detectives out. I said, listen, take a shotgun. I'm authorized. Take the shotgun, protect yourself. You go out. So at one point, I'll never forget it, the FBI comes up with information. Oh, thank God, the FBI, they're so smart. The FBI has information that Larry Davis is hiding in Harlem. Yeah, good. Somebody told the FBI that black people live in Harlem. So they don't talk to us. They talk to the chiefs, because the chiefs are smarter than anybody, right? They put together an apprehension team. The informant for the FBI has been given $5,000. If Larry Davis is in their building, he's going to take his hat off and we raid the apartment. I'm not part of this. I'm not the wrong. Anyway, he goes in, takes his hat off, goes out the back door with $5,000 of tax money. They hit the wrong apartment, scared the hell out of a grandma, right? What an abortion. Meanwhile, we had information in the Bronx, but we couldn't move on it because the trucks are in Manhattan. And only the convoy has to be led by a super chief. So now it's December 5th, 1986. I'm in my command, and all of a sudden the phone rings, one of my detectives. Boss, we got Larry on the wire. He's at his sister's house on Webster Avenue. Now, we already know about that place. We've mapped it out and everything. I said, do not notify command and control. You have notified me. At that point, I was insubordinate. The deputy inspector, whose details says, I'm out of here. In other words, if you want to commit suicide, I don't want to watch. So he left me to my own devices. I sent 38 black and Hispanic undercover officers, which were in my command, standing by, into that building. Nobody out, nobody in. They want to go out, they can't go out. They want to come in, they can't come in. When that building's locked down, you call me, we'll send the white faces in. In the meantime, I put the trucks on alert 5 blocks away. Stand by, we have Larry Davis trapped. I jump in a car with my detective to go out to the perimeter so we can watch what's going on. I can't hear a fucking thing because of the radio. I said, you know that switch on the radio? Just turn that switch off. You don't hear nothing. I just turned it off. Now I'm on the portable talking to cops. Oh, you got him in? You got him? Okay, turn the radio back on. Okay, move the trucks forthwith. We haven't, right? It took them 15 minutes to go 5 blocks. Why? Because it was Custer's turn to leave the parade that day and he's stuck in Manhattan. When the trucks pull up, Custer, by whose authority have you done this? I said, by the authority vested in common sense. By the way, Chief, you know that beetle hump, they make you look like an asshole. He turns around to see if anybody heard me. I ran to the building and nowhere to go. So now I'm in the building. Now they bring me downstairs to the housing police facility, and all 3 chiefs are there screaming at me. Rotundo, Patton, and Custer. As a lieutenant from housing watching this, he says, Vernon, later on tells me, it was the funniest fucking thing I ever saw. All the chiefs are screaming at you, they're red in the face, and you're smiling. Are you finished, Chief? Are you finished? So the chief, Patton, a very sardonic personality, he used to call his chiefs and inspectors, he called them by the rank of captain to scare them, because that was the last civil service rank, okay, because the other ranks are paper ranks. So, Vernon, are you a lieutenant commander or a lieutenant? A lieutenant commander would know how to obey orders. Chief, I'm whatever the fuck you want me to be, but my men got him in the building. They're not your men, they're my men. Okay, then your men got him in the building. Then the next guy, why'd you do it, Geberth? Because I wanted to see him get caught this time. We're a laughing stock. Then my guy, you were insubordinate. No, I says, no, I improvised, adapted, and overcome. So the verbal flogging stopped when he's back on the wire telling us, tell him that I left the building. So in other words, he's in the building. We finally locate him. 8 hours later. The guy that the entire NYPD could not catch is going to get caught like this. He got hungry for Chinese food. So he sends the people out that he's holding the family, get me Chinese food and don't tell the cops I'm up here holding your family. This is the guy we couldn't catch. So we get him, he surrenders, and in a really ridiculous situation, there's a phalanx of police officers, the police commissioner, Patton, and my detective, Eddie Lugo, walk him out through a phalanx of cops, and the people in the project yelling, Larry, Larry. He's a hero. This female reporter runs up to me, Vernon, didn't you call this raid? I says, off the record, yes. On the record, no. The generals, see, the generals are having a press conference. The generals caught him. There's the general. We have no community unrest. Larry Davis is unharmed. Meanwhile, I got 6 cops in the hospital. Mary Buckley had a teeth bone. O'Hara was shot. McCarran, I mean, this is terrible. Well, I know the next morning I'm finished. You don't do what I did and get away with it. But I'm going to get a temporary reprieve because they're so happy they captured him. So 1 week later, they're having a big ceremony at headquarters, giving each other commendations for capturing Larry Davis. I'm laughing my ass off. I stopped laughing in February when the guy I called an asshole became the chief of detectives. I'm done. There's no doubt about it. I had already made plans. I knew it was coming. I could feel it because listen, I'm pretty astute with department protocols. I had already engineered my exit. I was ready to go. You would never know I was leaving. I had all kinds of things lined up as far as training schedules and this and that and department functions. Meanwhile, my papers are ready. And I had the senior administrative aide who helped me says, Vernon, you can't be around, take a vacation, a week of vacation. So I take a week of vacation. Me and my wife and 2 younger children go down to Disney World. And you want to know something? The mouse runs a better operation. I should have been working for the mouse. In any event, what happens is, it's Friday. I'm not going to be in Friday because I'm teaching the homicide school, so I won't be in the office. On Monday, my papers are ready to go. It's through the weekend. I'm about to make the biggest decision of my life. It's Sunday night. I couldn't sleep. I got one of those grandfather clocks. 1, 2, 3, 4. I said, fuck it, I'm up. Shower, I go down to headquarters, 7 o'clock. It's too early. Get a cup of coffee. But before I left, I took the police plate so I could park. In 45 minutes, I go from lieutenant commander to civilian. It's the strangest feeling in the world. I turn in my badge, I have a duplicate. The guns, I have them, I have a concealed carry. Patrol guide, get my ID card stamped. I walk out and I noticed that for the first time in 23 years, I'm illegally parked. But I took the police plate, so I'm covered. Now it's my job to go back and tell the chief. Now, the interesting thing is, in the big scheme of things, how this was supposed to work is that they would send an inspection team up and I'd die of 1,000 cuts and he's supposed to get me for the guy downtown. I come walking, I knock on his door, and she, what are you doing here? Supposed to be working evenings. Oh, I just saying say goodbye. Goodbye, you just had a vacation. Come back after I have my coffee and take a shit, Geberth. He said, you're going to shit in a minute. I go back to my command, I tell everybody, I'm out. Oh my God, boss, what are you doing? The phone starts ringing off the hook. Calls me back into the door. What are you doing here? I said, I told you, I came to say goodbye. What do you mean goodbye? I said, these are my papers. I'm exited forthwith. I waived all terminal leave. I felt like saying something like, adios, motherfucker. But after 23 years of yes sir, no sir, I couldn't do that. So the only bad part of the story is 4 of my detectives threw their papers in because you're the last real homicide boss. We can't work for anybody else after this. The good part of the story is I launched my new career, practical homicide investigation. And look where I am today. So,
Vernon, I can't tell you what an honor it was to talk with you, and I am so glad that I made it down here, and thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.